Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we step beyond your world. Are you lying in bed, hoping for sleep, or working late, wondering if rest will come at all? Let your thoughts drift as we wander through a silent forest where pools lead to other worlds until we reach one shaped by a lion's song. This is Narnia, ancient, magical, and bound by laws older than time. Stay close. The journey is only beginning. If you enjoy this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can follow us deeper into the cosmos. Imagine a forest unlike any you've walked through before. The air is heavy with stillness, not the ordinary quiet of a sleepy afternoon, but a silence so deep it feels like sound itself has been locked away. Soft, golden light filters down through a canopy of leaves that never seem to move, even though there is no roof above them. The ground is covered in thick, springy moss, dotted with pools of water. These pools are perfectly round, their surfaces as smooth as mirrors. When you look into one, you might see nothing but a reflection of the trees above, but lean a little closer, and the image begins to change. In one pool, you catch a shimmer of sunlight falling across rolling green hills. In another, the dull crimson light of a dying sun over a ruined city. In a third, the vast, endless dark of space pierced by unfamiliar stars. This is the wood between the worlds, a place outside of time, outside of normal reality. Every pool here is a doorway, a link to another world entirely. Some pools lead to places known the green fields and talking beasts of Narnia, the harsh and broken land of Charn, the familiar streets of Earth. Others lead to worlds no traveler has yet returned from to tell the tale. Step here without purpose, and you may lose your memory of who you are, lulled into a calm so deep it could last forever. Stay too long, and you might forget that any other place exists at all. And yet, for those who know how to use it, by magic rings, by intention, by fate, this wood is a map of infinite destinations. Tonight our journey begins not by stepping into Narnia directly, but by standing here at the quiet crossroads of the multiverse. Because to understand Narnia, its nature, its rules, its heart, you first need to see it in context. It is not a solitary kingdom floating in a void. It is one note in a much greater song, one verse in a story spanning countless worlds. And though it is unique, it shares connections with realms as different as they are distant. So, let's walk toward one of these pools. Watch as the golden reflection ripples, as if something within is stirring, drawing you closer. In a moment, the water's surface will break, and on the other side, a world will be waiting. Narnia is a world, but also a realm within a vast magical multiverse. Its existence is not isolated. Just as Earth has continents, the multiverse has worlds, and they can be traveled between if one knows the right path. The most famous of these gateways is, of course, the wardrobe in Professor Kirky's house, a portal disguised as an ordinary piece of furniture, hiding a passage to snowy forests under an eternal winter. But the wardrobe is far from the only way. Paintings, caves, enchanted rings, even certain doorways in out-of-the-way buildings have all served as thresholds. The wood between the worlds is the great connector. It lies outside the flow of ordinary time. A second in Earth's London might be days, years, or centuries in Narnia. Sometimes, when you return to your own world, not a single moment has passed, even if you've lived a lifetime elsewhere. This distortion of time is one of the multiverse's great mysteries. Narnia itself is a complete, self-contained world, a landmass with mountains to the west, marshes to the north, forests and rivers running toward the Eastern Ocean. Beyond its borders lie other nations, Archenland, Calamen, the Lone Islands, and beyond those, the wild, unexplored reaches. Above its skies sail not just stars, but star people, living beings who can descend to Earth in human form. But what makes Narnia truly distinct is that magic is not an intrusion here. It is the underlying framework of the world. Every tree, every stream, Every living creature exists in harmony with enchantment. Some beings, like fauns, dryads, and centaurs, embody it completely. Others, like humans, may wield it through learning or inheritance. In this web of worlds, Narnia holds a special place. It is the meeting point of divine purpose and mortal story. Many of its rulers have come not from within, but from outside. Sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, drawn from earth, who arrive not by chance, but by calling. And always, somewhere in the background, a great presence watches and waits for the moment to step in. That presence is Aslan. And to understand Narnia, we must go back to the dawn, to the moment he sang it into being. Before Narnia was, there was nothing. Not the nothing of an empty room or a dark night, but a nothing so complete it could not even be called darkness. There was no up or down, no ground to stand upon, no air to breathe. If you could have been there, you would have felt that even time was holding its breath. Then somewhere in that void, a sound began. At first, it was so low and deep, it might have been mistaken for the rumble of distant earth. If there had been earth to rumble, slowly, it swelled, the single note gathering richness, layers and harmonies, until it was not just sound, but song. Stars appeared in answer to the music, as though each note called one into being. First a scattering of silver pinpricks in the sky, then great blazing spheres, each joining the melody with its own voice. The darkness became a sky, the sky became a dome of living light. The song changed, and with it, the world took shape. Hills rose from unseen foundations, rolling out like the folds of a blanket. Valleys sank between them, ready to catch the rivers that were even now beginning to flow. Grass and flowers erupted from bare soil, a wave of green rushing outward from where the song was strongest. Another change in melody, and life itself stepped forward. From the ground came creatures of every kind, badgers blinking in the new sunlight, deer tossing their antlers, lions stretching their limbs and shaking dust from golden manes. Birds lifted into the air with startled cries that quickly became the first chorus of this newborn world. At the center of it all was a figure, a lion, vast and golden, with a mane that caught the light like fire and eyes that seemed to see, not just what was, but what could be. This was Aslan. The song had been his, and it had poured from him as naturally as breath. He walked among the gathered creatures, his paws silent on the fresh grass. When he spoke, his voice was both command and blessing. To the animals he said, "Be talking beasts," and they found that they could not only speak, but think and remember. To the rivers he said, "Be divine waters," and they laughed in ripples of silver. To the stars he had called into being, he gave names only they could understand. It was not just a creation of matter, but of identity. Every beast, every tree, every stream was given a place in the story of this world, and above all, they were bound by the harmony that had brought them into being. In those first days, Narnia was a place of unbroken peace. The talking beasts roamed without fear, the trees whispered to one another in contentment, and the air was filled with the scents of blossom and rain. But even in this golden beginning, Aslan inscribed into the very bones of the world the laws that would guide it, laws that spoke of justice, choice, and consequence. For in creating a world, you also create the possibility of its testing, and though no shadow yet lay upon Narnia, the stage was already set for the trials that would one day come. From the moment Narnia's first grass blade pushed through the soil, it was already bound by laws. These were not laws written on scrolls or proclaimed in courts. They were older than ink, older than paper, older even than the hills themselves. They were part of the world's foundation, as much a part of its fabric as the light in the sky or the pulse of the rivers. This was the deep magic from the dawn of time. It was justice in its purest, most unyielding form. The deep magic decreed that every deed carried its price, every betrayal its consequence. One clause of this law was feared above all others. If any creature committed treachery, breaking faith, betraying their kin or their cause, then their life belonged to the White Witch. She had the right to claim it, and if she were denied, the very land would rise in rebellion, unmaking itself, rather than let the law be broken. This law did not care for intentions, or excuses, or pleas for mercy. It was absolute. Even Aslan, who had sung the world into being, acknowledged it. For to break the deep magic was to tear at the threads of the world's own song. Yet the deep magic was not the oldest law. Beneath it, like bedrock beneath the soil, lay something older still, the deeper magic from before the dawn of time. This was not about punishment, but about restoration. It held a secret the witch did not fully understand. If a willing, innocent victim offered themselves to die in place of a traitor, then the stone table, the great altar of judgment, would crack, and death itself would start working backward. The guilty would go free, and the grip of evil would falter. The deeper magic did not erase justice. It fulfilled it in a way the deep magic alone could not. It was a law written, not in the language of power, but in the language of sacrifice. It was this deeper magic that Aslan himself would one day invoke when a traitor stood condemned under the deep magic. Aslan offered his own life in their place. The witch, believing she had won, executed him upon the stone table. But with the breaking dawn came the sound of stone splitting, and Aslan rose again, not in defiance of the law, but in perfect obedience to one older and higher than the witch had ever imagined. From that moment, the eternal winter she had cast over Narnia began to thaw. Snow melted into rivers, ice broke from the trees, and the land woke from a century of silence. The deep magic and the deeper magic together form the moral architecture of Narnia. One without the other would make the world either a cold machine of punishment or a chaos of unchecked pardon. Together, they keep the balance, justice met, mercy given, the song of the world restored to harmony. In Narnia, magic is not a trick for bending nature's rules. It is the music in which the rules themselves are written. With creation complete and its laws in place, Narnia took on a character all its own. Here, nature is alive in more than the biological sense. Every river may have a spirit, every tree a dryad who feels the wind as a human might feel a caress. The stars above are not cold, distant fires, but thinking beings, capable of walking the land and speaking in voices like silver bells. Humans exist in Narnia, but most of its rulers and heroes have come from beyond. They are sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, invited or summoned into the story at moments of great need. When they arrive, they are greeted not as strangers, but as long-expected friends. The world is shared by a multitude of races and cultures, talking animals, mythic creatures like centaurs and fauns, dwarfs in their mountain halls, naiads in their streams. Coexistence is the norm, though not without its tensions. Magic is not decoration, it is the foundation. It is in the way the seasons turn, the way prophecies unfold, the way a single roar from Aslan can bend the will of armies or call the dead to life. Time in Narnia is fluid, tied to stories rather than clocks. Ages of peace may pass in what feels like moments to outsiders, while decades in Narnia might be only seconds on Earth. All of this gives Narnia its identity, a place where the ordinary and the miraculous walk hand in hand, where the moral shape of the universe is as real as the mountains and the sea. When you first step into Narnia, you are not merely entering a location, you are joining a narrative that began long before you arrived and will continue long after you leave. You might hear the whisper of trees greeting one another in the twilight, or see the reflection of a lion's golden mane in a stream. You might feel that the ground beneath your feet remembers every step ever taken upon it. But to truly know Narnia, you must go beyond its creation and its laws. You must walk through its history, the golden ages and the long winters, the rise of kings and queens, the threats from without and within. That is where we go next, into the unfolding of its ages, the shaping of its borders, and the lives of those who have called it home. Before there was Narnia, there was nothing. Not the empty dark of a moonless night, but a nothing so complete that words like dark and empty didn't even apply. No sky, no earth, no sound, not even the idea of time moving forward. It was as if the universe had paused before its very first breath. And then that breath came. It began as a single note, deep and golden, humming somewhere in the void. You might have mistaken it for the slow, rolling rumble of an ocean you couldn't yet see, or the echo of something vast moving far away. But it wasn't an echo, it was a beginning. The note grew, swelling into a melody that curled through the emptiness like sunlight spilling over a horizon that didn't yet exist. And as it grew, light bloomed. One by one, stars pierced the void, each answering the song with a voice of its own. Soon there were thousands, then millions, their harmonies weaving into the melody until the darkness had become a sky, alive and listening. The song shifted, warmer now, and the sun came into being, a blazing golden orb, its light falling on land that was only just being born. Hills rolled upward as though waking from deep sleep. Valleys sank into place, ready to catch the rivers that were spilling across the new world's skin. Grass burst from the earth in waves, carrying the fresh scent of life. Another change in the song, and the waters stirred. From rivers and seas came creatures, silver fish darting in flashes of light, swans gliding on rippling currents. From the ground rose animals of every kind, foxes with curious eyes, badgers blinking in the sun, lions stretching their limbs, shaking the dust of newness from their manes. At the heart of it all stood a great lion. His mane caught the newborn sunlight like fire. His eyes seemed to hold the knowledge of everything that would ever be. This was Aslan, and the song was his. He walked among the creatures, his steps soundless on the soft earth. To the animals he said, "Be talking beasts," and they found themselves able to speak, to remember, to choose. To the rivers he said, "Be divine waters," and they laughed in silver ripples. Even the stars heard their names called in a language older than time. It was the first dawn of Narnia, and though everything was fresh and untested, Aslan was already weaving into its foundations laws that would shape every life from this moment onward. These laws were not written in ink, they were not spoken aloud for all to hear. They were older than language itself, and yet every creature, from the mightiest star to the smallest mouse, understood them. They were the deep magic from the dawn of time. Think of the deep magic as the steady rhythm that holds a great symphony together. You may not always notice it, but without it, the entire composition would fall apart. In Narnia, the deep magic was that rhythm, the pulse that kept the world in order. It governed the relationships between life and death, between truth and betrayal, between loyalty and treachery, and its rules were absolute. One of its most feared decrees stated that if any creature committed treachery, breaking faith, betraying a friend or their rightful king, then that life belonged to the White Witch. She had the right to claim it, and if she were denied, the very fabric of Narnia would rebel. The mountains would crumble, the rivers would run backward, and the world would unmake itself rather than allow the law to be broken. The deep magic didn't care about motives or excuses. It was a force of nature, as indifferent as gravity or the turning of the seasons. Even Aslan, the one who had sung the world into being, acknowledged it, for to break the deep magic would not just be to break a rule, it would be to pull apart the threads of the song that held Narnia together. And yet the deep magic was not a prison, it was a framework, one that made trust possible, that gave meaning to loyalty, that kept chaos from swallowing the land. In a way, it was the skeleton of Narnia's morality, invisible most of the time, but essential to its shape. Imagine it as a lattice of light running beneath the surface of the world. You cannot see it, but if you could, you would notice how every river, every tree, every star is connected by those lines. When the law is kept, the lattice hums with quiet harmony. But if the law is broken, the harmony shatters, and the lattice blazes into sight, demanding that balance be restored. This is why the deep magic inspires both reverence and fear. It promises stability, but only so long as no one dares to defy it. And yet, beneath this network of justice, lies something older still, a second rhythm in the symphony, a hidden melody that the witch herself did not understand. Before the dawn of time, before Aslan's first note split the silence, there was a law older than the hills, older than the stars, older even than the deep magic itself. It was called the deeper magic from before the dawn of time. If the deep magic is the steady beat of the world's heart, the rhythm that enforces justice and keeps the world from collapsing into chaos, then the deeper magic is the secret harmony hidden beneath it. You might not hear it at first. It lies silent, dormant, like a low chord, waiting for the right moment to emerge. But when it rises, it changes everything. The deeper magic does not erase the deep magic. It fulfills it, lifting it to a level the witch could never understand. While the deep magic declares that every betrayal must be paid for in blood, the deeper magic declares something even stranger, that if a willing, innocent victim takes the place of the traitor, then the ancient sentence is not only satisfied, it is reversed. Death itself will begin to work backwards. The stone table, the great altar of judgment, older than Narnia's mountains, will crack in two, chains will fall away, the grip of evil will loosen, and life will spill back into the places it had abandoned. This is not a loophole, not a trick. It is not an act of rebellion against the deep magic, but the deepest obedience to a truth that underlies it. It is the law written in the lion's own voice into the bedrock of creation. That sacrifice freely given is stronger than any claim made by hate. The White Witch, clever as she was, never grasped it. She knew the deep magic well enough. She had built her reign on it, wielding it like a blade. She could cite its rules word for word, demand her rights under it, and terrify her enemies by invoking it. But the deeper magic was beyond her reach, because it was beyond her nature. She could not imagine giving up her life for another, and so she could not imagine anyone else doing it, and that blindness would one day be her undoing. When a traitor's life was forfeit under the deep magic, Aslan stepped forward. He offered himself, without resistance, without conditions. The witch believed she had won the greatest victory of her life. She had the lion bound, shaved, humiliated, and finally slain upon the stone table. Night fell over Narnia, cold and absolute, but with the coming dawn came the sound of stone splitting. The table was broken, not by the witch's malice, but by the fulfillment of a promise she had never known existed. And standing there, alive again, was Aslan, not in defiance of the deep magic, but in complete harmony with a law far older, far stronger. From that moment, the witch's power began to unravel. The snow melted, rivers ran free, and spring returned to a land that had forgotten the taste of warmth. The deep magic appears rarely in Narnia's history, but when it does not merely change the course of events, it rewrites the ending. It is the quiet chord beneath the world's music, waiting for the moment when courage and love strike it in perfect time. Narnia is not merely a stage on which its stories play out. It is a living body, and every part of it, from the smallest pebble to the farthest star, is alive in its own way. Look up on a clear night, and you will see stars moving, not the imperceptible drift of our world's constellations, but a slow, deliberate motion, like travelers walking across the heavens. These are not just balls of gas, but beings of thought and purpose. Sometimes a star will descend to the land, taking human form. Ramundu, Liliandil, they are star people, their voices carrying the cool clarity of starlight, their presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. When they return to the sky, their light shines warmer, as if touched by the world below. The forests are not silent masses of leaves and bark. Each tree may hold a dryad, a spirit bound to its trunk and roots, who can step out into the world in human shape when the time is right. Rivers are not mindless currents, but homes to naiads, who know the moods of the water as intimately as we know our own heartbeat. Even the air hums with magic. It is not a tool to be wielded, but an atmosphere that all things breathe. It allows words to sink deeper than sound, to touch the essence of what they name. When Aslan speaks, the magic in the air bends toward his will, as grass bends toward sunlight. Time itself flows differently here. It is shaped not by mechanical clocks, but by the unfolding of the story. Years may pass in the space of a single breath on Earth, or the other way around. In this way, Narnia exists slightly out of sync with other worlds, always at the right time for those who are meant to be there. It is tempting to think of this as chaos, but in truth, it is simply another layer of the music. The deep magic sets the tempo. The deeper magic adds the harmony. And Narnia's living universe fills in the melody, the moving stars, the whispering trees, the speaking rivers, the breathing mountains. This is why Narnia feels so complete, so real. Even though it is shot through with miracles, its laws are not separate from its wonders. They are the same thing. The stars step down from the heavens because the laws allow them to. The rivers laugh because they were made to. The great lion walks among the living because this is the shape the song has always had. From the first note of Aslan's song to the unseen lines of lore beneath its surface, Narnia is a world held together by more than soil and stone. It was born in music and light, and it moves to a rhythm set at the dawn of its existence. The deep magic keeps that rhythm steady, the unyielding beat of justice. The deeper magic adds the possibility of grace. the harmony that can turn even death into life. Around them both stretches the living universe, stars that walk, forests that speak, rivers that remember, and time that bends to the needs of the story. Every part of it is a note in a single, unending composition. And yet, even the most beautiful song can be tested. The deep magic will one day be challenged. The deeper magic will be called upon in desperation. The living world itself will be threatened, because Narnia, for all its wonders, is not untouched by shadow. In the chapters ahead, we will walk into that shadow, into the bright beginnings of its history, the golden ages and the long winters, the rise and fall of its kings and queens. For the laws that shape the world are only as strong as those who choose to uphold them. And in Narnia, choice has always been where the story truly begins. The creation, the reign of Frank and Helen. It began with a song. At first the world was only darkness, not the cold emptiness of nothing, but a silence waiting to be filled. Then, from somewhere beyond the veil, came the sound of a single note, deep and golden. It grew into a melody, and the melody into a chorus, as if the very air were being pulled awake. As Aslan sang, the sky kindled. Colors spilled like water across the heavens, golds and blues that shimmered and folded into one another. The ground trembled, and from its surface, blades of grass unfurled, catching the newborn light. Rivers found their beds and began to laugh softly over stone. From the earth itself, animals rose, not crawling, but emerging whole, eyes bright and unafraid. Some came from the forest, though no forest had stood there before. Others stepped from the sea, shaking the water from their coats. Still others descended from the mountains in pairs, and they spoke, for they had been given voices, as surely as they had been given breath. It was then that Aslan brought forward two humans from another world, a cabman named Frank and his wife Helen. They were ordinary by the measure of their own land, but here, in the glow of the first sunrise, they stood tall among centaurs and fauns. Aslan crowned them the first king and queen of Narnia, charging them to rule with justice and mercy, to keep the harmony between speaking beast and humankind. Boundaries were set. To the south lay Archenland, a friendly ally. To the north, the wild lands of giants. To the east, the unending sea. And for a time, the air itself seemed to hum with peace. The stars, newly hung in the heavens, would sometimes walk the earth in the shape of travelers, speaking softly of things yet to come. It was an age of innocence, a garden before the first shadow. The first golden age, the reign of Frank and Helen, passed into history like the last notes of a hymn lingering in the air, and with it came the first golden age of Narnia, a time when the land seemed to live in perfect balance. From the shores of the eastern sea to the shadowed forests near the northern giant's realm, there was peace. Caer Paravel, with its 4 white towers, shone like a jewel on the coast. Its great hall welcomed all who sought audience, talking beasts with grievances, centaurs bringing prophecies, and merchants from Archenland carrying spices wrapped in silk. Trade routes flourished. Southward, over the green hills, lay Archenland, a steadfast ally whose gates were always open. Dwarfs brought finely wrought tools and armor. Beavers offered fresh-caught river fish. Fauns traded woven cloth, colored with dyes made from forest berries. In return, Archenland's caravans brought wine from sunlit valleys and stories from distant lands. Magic in those days was no rare spectacle. A farmer might ask a dryad to bless his orchard, and the trees would blossom early. Messengers traveled not only on horseback, but on the wings of great eagles, or by stepping through gates that joined far corners of the kingdom. Even the stars seemed closer then, descending now and again to walk the earth in human form, offering counsel or silent companionship. The borders were safe, guarded by both human knights and beastly warriors. Badgers with spears, bears in gilded armor, unicorns swift as the wind. Disputes were settled in council rather than on the battlefield, and the people of Narnia began to believe that such peace might last forever. It was a time of songs sung openly in the marketplaces, of summer feasts where centaurs told the movements of the heavens, and of winter gatherings in firelit halls where old stories were passed to the young. And yet, like all golden ages, it was fragile. For though harmony reigned in the sunlight, shadows were beginning to stir far beyond Narnia's borders, and no one yet knew that the first frost of 100-year winter was already on its way. The 100 years debt winter, Jadis Sip's rule. The change came quietly at first. Travelers from the north spoke of strange lights over the mountains, and hunters whispered of a pale woman moving through the forests. She called herself Jadis, the White Witch, and her beauty was cold enough to make the air bite sharper. She did not come with armies at her back, but with words that bent the will, promises wrapped in velvet. Her rise was swift. She invoked the deep magic, claiming rights no one dared challenge. Those who opposed her vanished into silence or were turned to stone, their final expressions frozen in her courtyard. To walk those halls was to be stared at forever by eyes that would never close. Then came the curse. Always winter, she declared, but never Christmas. Snow began to fall and did not melt. Rivers froze, their voices smothered under layers of ice. The sun rose late and set early, casting only a thin, sickly light across the land. Wolves roamed as her secret police, their paws leaving no sound on the snow, their yellow eyes seeking those who still dared whisper Aslan's name. Fear became the breath of Narnia. Markets closed, trade with Archenland dwindled to nothing, and the once busy roads grew silent. The magical gates between distant towns sealed themselves, as if unwilling to open in such a cold age. Even the stars, who had once descended to walk among Narnians, stayed in the sky, watching but no longer stepping down. Generations passed under her rule. Children grew up never knowing the taste of summer fruit, never hearing the song of a river in spring. They were told there had never been another way to live, that Narnia had always been like this. Yet in the coldest season, there is still a pulse beneath the ice. Rumors spread in hushed voices of a lion's return, of 4 thrones standing empty at Cair Paravel, and far away, footsteps began to fall on a snowy path, 4 pairs, coming from another world. The second golden age, the Pevensies. The first sign that the curse was breaking came not in the sky, but in the earth. A trickle of water ran beneath the snow, carrying with it the smell of living soil. Buds swelled on branches that had been bare for a century, and in the distance, the deep, unmistakable roar of a lion rolled across the hills. Aslan had returned. The 4 children from another world, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey, had come to fulfill an ancient prophecy. When 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve sit on the thrones at Cair Paravel, Narnia's sorrows will end. Their arrival stirred the land awake. Flowers burst through melting snow, rivers laughed freely once more, and the icy grip of Jadis began to loosen. The breaking of the witch's power came in a great battle. On the fields beneath the golden light of dawn, Aslan's army clashed with hers, centaurs against wolves, griffins against foul spirits, and a lion against the White Witch herself. When she fell, winter broke completely. At Cair Paravel, the Pevensies were crowned, High King Peter the Magnificent, Queen Susan the Gentle, King Edmund the Just, and Queen Lucy the Valiant. Under their rule, Narnia bloomed. Ships once more sailed from the eastern harbour, carrying explorers to the lone islands. The arts flourished. Dwarfs crafted wonders in their forges, and centaur scholars charted the stars with precision unseen in generations. Trade with Archenland resumed, and even lands beyond the Great Eastern Sea sent envoys to the shining halls of Cair Paravel. Peace lasted for many years. It was said that the very air seemed lighter, and laughter was as common as birdsong. The 4 siblings ruled side by side, their thrones never empty, their voices united. But time moved strangely in Narnia. One day, during a hunt along the western woods, the kings and queens vanished from this world, returning to their own without warning. The thrones stood empty once more, and though the Golden Age lingered in memory, the wind had already begun to carry the scent of change. The Telmarine Age. The years after the Pevensies vanished were a time of uncertainty. At first, the memory of their reign kept Narnia's peace alive, but peace without guardians is fragile. Whispers came from the sea, rumors of human ships sailing from distant lands, carrying people who feared the open water, yet hungered for new territory. These were the Telmarines, descendants of pirates, who had stumbled upon a hidden island. They were a people hardened by the sea and bound by suspicion of anything they could not understand. By chance or fate, they found the western coast of Narnia, and they did not come as guests. With steel and numbers, they pushed inland. Talking beasts fled into the deep forests. Dryads faded into their trees. Fauns and satyrs vanished into the mountains. The Telmarines did not slay them outright, but they feared and distrusted magic. And so, in time, the marvelous became the forbidden. Stories of Aslan, the Pevensies, and the Golden Ages were declared mere fairy tales. The great halls of Cair Paravel fell silent, its towers crumbling beneath ivy and salt winds. The stone table lay forgotten in a glade no Telmarine dared to enter. The deep magic still existed, but in whispers, in lullabies sung to children when the doors were locked and the shutters drawn. Telmarine kings ruled from fortified keeps, far from the sea they feared. They expanded their farmlands, built roads, and enforced laws that favored order over wonder. Magic was not outlawed outright, but it was driven so far underground that most grew up never seeing it at all. Generations passed, and even the memory of magic dimmed. To most Telmarines, talking animals were a superstition, and the thought of a lion shaping the world was laughed at as nonsense. But deep in the hidden places, in badger sets, dryad groves, and centaur councils held under moonlight, the old stories endured. And one day, those whispers would reach the ears of a young prince named Caspian, who would dare to dream of a Narnia restored. The Renaissance, Caspian X. Prince Caspian grew up within the stone walls of a Telmarine castle, heir to a throne built on conquest. His tutors taught him history stripped of wonder, a version of Narnia where magic was nonsense and the talking beasts were myths. Yet in secret, his nurse and an old professor whispered forbidden tales of a time when lions sang the world awake and kings and queens sat in Cair Paravel's high hall. When his father's death placed his usurping uncle, Miraz, on the throne, Caspian's life became a careful game of survival. But the more he learned of the Telmarine suppression, the more he longed for the Narnia of legend. His chance came when he fled the castle to escape Miraz's schemes, carrying with him the horn of Queen Susan, a relic said to summon help from the past. The call was answered. From another world came the Pevensies, drawn back into Narnia, centuries after their departure. Together with dwarfs, badgers, centaurs, and all manner of hidden creatures, they rallied an army to reclaim the land's magic and free it from Telmarine fear. The decisive battle ended not with annihilation, but with an act of mercy. The Telmarines, who wished to leave, were given safe passage to another land. Those who stayed were invited to live alongside Narnia's native people. Caspian was crowned king, Caspian X, a ruler who vowed to unite both peoples under a banner of trust. Under his reign, the gates to the old wonders were opened once more. Cair Paravel was rebuilt, its towers gleaming against the eastern sun. The forests echoed with songs of dryads. The rivers welcomed naiads dancing in their currents. Trade with Archenland resumed, and ships once again sailed the eastern sea in search of adventure. It was a rebirth not only of magic, but of hope, and for a time, it seemed that Narnia's story might once again be one of unbroken peace. The last days, the final battle. No reign lasts forever. In the final age, a false prophet arose, an ape named Shift, who clothed a simple donkey in a lion's skin and declared Aslan had returned. His lies divided Narnia. Many believed, others resisted, and into this fracture stepped the Calamines, enemies from the south, using deceit to gain footholds in the land. War followed, not grand and sweeping, but bitter and treacherous. Friends turned against each other. The final stand came at a stable, where truth and falsehood clashed in the smallest of spaces. Then the skies tore open, stars fell, the sun was swallowed. Aslan appeared, not as the gentle guide of old, but as the judge, closing the book of Narnia's history. The earth folded in upon itself, the seas were gathered up, and the last light of the material world went out. Yet this was not an ending, not truly, for beyond the ruin lay the true Narnia, brighter and more real than the land had ever been. The country, Aslan, had been leading them toward all along. And so the great song of Narnia ended, not in silence, but in a final, perfect chord. Its notes still hang in the air for those who remember, for those who can still hear, faintly, the music of creation in their dreams. If you were to leave the eastern gates of Caer-Paravel at dawn, the air still cool and the light spilling gold across the waves, you might feel the pull of every horizon at once. Northward, the forests stand deep and green. Southward, mountains guard the passes into allied lands. Westward, the plains fade into mystery. And eastward, the sea calls with promises of islands and distant shores. Narnia is not merely a kingdom, it is a tapestry of meadows and rivers, mountains and markets, wildwood glades and sunlit harbors. Its borders brush against the realms of other nations, the expanse of the Eastern Ocean, and, if you travel far enough, the very edge of the world. This is our journey today, to walk its fields, pass through its forests, sail its seas, and climb its mountains until we have touched every corner of the map. If you were to leave the eastern gates of Caer-Paravel at dawn, the air still cool and the light spilling gold across the waves, you might feel the pull of every horizon at once. Northward, the forests stand deep and green. Southward, mountains guard the passes into allied lands. Westward, the plains fade into mystery. And eastward, the sea calls with promises of islands and distant shores. Narnia is not merely a kingdom, it is a tapestry of meadows and rivers, mountains and markets, wildwood glades and sunlit harbors. Its borders brush against the realms of other nations, the expanse of the Eastern Ocean, and, if you travel far enough, the very edge of the world. This is our journey today, to walk its fields, pass through its forests, sail its seas, and climb its mountains until we have touched every corner of the map. South of Narnia, beyond the rolling meadows and pine-covered hills, a narrow mountain pass leads into the kingdom of Archenland. The journey there feels like slipping through a guarded door. The high cliffs on either side rise so steeply that sunlight only spills in for a few hours each day. Stone watchtowers crown the ridges, their banners stirring in the wind, for this pass is the lifeline between the two allied realms. Archenland's landscape is rugged, yet welcoming. Broad valleys spread between ridges of red and brown rock, their slopes dotted with wild goats and hardy pines. In spring, the high pastures burst with alpine flowers, purple gentians, golden buttercups, and the white stars of Edelweiss. Summer brings warm days and cool nights, with herds grazing under a sky so clear that constellations seem close enough to touch. At the heart of Archenland lies Anvard, the capital and only major city. Built of reddish stone, quarried from the surrounding hills, Anvard's walls rise in tiered circles, protecting its royal palace at the summit. From the city gates, cobbled streets wind upward past smithies, bakeries, and open-air markets, where traders call out in voices warm with familiarity. Horses, both talking and dumb, are common here, and the sound of hooves on stone mingles with the scent of fresh bread and wood smoke. Though smaller and less fertile than Narnia, Archenland holds its own in courage and loyalty. For centuries, its riders have ridden north in times of war, answering Narnia's call without hesitation. In return, Narnia's ships bring grain, wine, and goods from across the Eastern Sea. Standing on the southern battlements of Anvard, you can see the hazy outline of Calaman, far beyond the desert, a reminder that while Archenland is peaceful, it remains ever watchful. Beyond the southern border of Archenland, the green valleys give way to dry foothills, and the air grows warmer with each step. Soon the land rolls into golden plains, and finally into the boundless desert of Calaman, a sea of shifting dunes that glitters like bronze beneath the midday sun. Traveling here is not for the unprepared. The desert's silence is vast, broken only by the sigh of wind over sand and the occasional cry of a distant hawk. Caravans wind like slow-moving serpents across the ridges, their camels draped in bright cloth and jangling bells. Travelers ride under tall, patterned canopies to escape the punishing heat, while guides read the land by the shape of the dunes and the stars at night. In time, the sands give way to Calaman's great cities, which rise like mirages from the horizon. Their architecture is a marvel of domes and spires, often inlaid with turquoise, gold and patterned tile that catches the light. Narrow streets twist between tall buildings, leading to courtyards shaded by fig and date palms. Fountains splash cool water into marble basins, their sound mingling with the calls of street vendors selling saffron, silk, and spiced wine. Calamine culture is steeped in poetry, storytelling, and ceremony. It is said that a nobleman here can recite 100 proverbs before breakfast, and a merchant can weave a bargain as skillfully as a court poet weaves verse. Hospitality is sacred. Guests are offered dates and sweet tea, yet political intrigue flows beneath the surface like an underground river. Relations with Narnia and Archenland have often been uneasy. Though trade flourishes, Calaman's ambitions sometimes reach northward, leading to tense borders and old grudges. Still, ships from Calaman's great ports carry exotic goods to Cair Paravel's harbor, carved ivory, perfumed oils, and rugs dyed in the deep red of pomegranate skins. At sunset, the desert sky turns the color of molten copper, and the mezzanine-like call of temple horns echoes over the rooftops. The city gates close, lanterns bloom like stars in the streets, and the night air cools just enough for life to spill into the markets again. The desert's heartbeat, slow but unending. Sail east from Cair Paravel, and the mainland fades into a blue line against the horizon. The eastern ocean stretches vast and glittering, its moods shifting with the wind, sometimes a gentle, glassy expanse, sometimes a restless mirror that tosses foam against the ship's hull. The first scattered specks of land appear after several days, small, uninhabited islets where seabirds wheel in the salt air and turtles sun themselves on white sand. Farther on, the islands grow larger, each with its own character and story. The Lone Islands, the westernmost group, are the best known. Falmouth, Avila, and Dawn rise from the sea in a chain, their green hills dotted with sheep and fishing villages. Stone harbors bustle with life, sailors shouting as they unload crates of citrus, nets heavy with silver fish, and barrels of brine-cured meat bound for Narnian tables. The air smells of tar, salt, and sun-warmed rope. Southeast lies Dragon Island, where steaming vents breathe from the earth, and the cliffs are streaked with copper and sulfur. Local lore tells of a dragon that once curled its immense body along the shore. Its bones are said to rest somewhere beneath the jungle canopy, though few dare search for them. Farther still is the Island of the Voices, whose invisible inhabitants make their presence known with laughter, sudden knocks, and half-sung songs carried on the wind. Travelers tell of narrow paths through thick trees, leading to strange gardens where every leaf seems to watch you. As you press on toward the utter east, the sea begins to sparkle with a strange silver light. Fish with opalescent scales dart beneath the keel, and the sky seems brighter, the clouds thinner. Here lies the Silver Sea, so pure that no salt stings your tongue when you taste it. It is said that beyond this place lies the very edge of the world, and across it, Aslan's own country. The Eastern Islands are more than waypoints on a map. They are thresholds, places where sailors glance at the horizon and wonder how far the ocean truly goes, and whether the stories of lands beyond the sunrise are only tales or promises. Sail beyond the Eastern Islands, and the sea changes. The deep blue waters grow pale, shimmering as if lit from beneath. The air itself feels lighter, cleaner, carrying a scent like fresh rain and wildflowers, though no land is yet in sight. This is the approach to the utter east, the farthest edge of the world known to Narnian maps. For days, the horizon glows faintly, as though the sun has left a piece of itself behind the curtain of the sky. The waves here move with a deliberate calm, as if aware they are nearing the place where the ocean ends. At last, the silver sea stretches before you, a vast expanse of water so clear that every shell and stone on its floor gleams in the light. Sailors tell of being able to lean over the side and see schools of fish darting in lazy spirals far below, their scales like liquid light. No salt burns your lips here. The water is sweet, cold, and alive. Some say that drinking it brings strength and clarity. Others claim it stirs memories of home you never knew you'd lost. Beyond the silver sea rises the most mysterious feature of the utter east, the uttermost wave. Unlike an ordinary swell, it is a single, unending wall of water, pale gold in the light of dawn, stretching across the world from north to south. It does not break, but hums with a low, resonant sound, a note that seems to settle in your chest. Few ships dare to come too near, for the wave marks the very brink of the world. Those who have journeyed closest speak of seeing far shores beyond it, washed in a light so pure it cannot be mistaken for the sun's. They tell of green fields rising to distant mountains, and a sky where the stars sing audibly. Some claim to have seen a great gate in those mountains, flung open just wide enough for a golden lion to pass through. Scattered along the approach to the utter east are tiny islands, no bigger than a market square, each crowned with a single tree. The air around these trees is always warm, even when the sea mists roll thick. Some bear fruits sweeter than any grown in Narnia. Others bloom with flowers that never fade, even when plucked. There are those who believe these are markers left by Aslan himself, guiding the way for those destined to travel on. In the quiet here, the usual sounds of the sea are different. The wind seems softer, the gulls rarer. At night, the stars hang lower, brighter, and it is not unusual to wake and find the ship surrounded by a faint golden glow. Mariners say that here, time feels thinner, as though each hour is only a veil you could reach through if you dared. The utter east is not a destination for trade or conquest. It is a place of endings and beginnings, where the known world falls away, and all that lies beyond belongs to the realm of the lion. Our journey has carried us from the green heart of Narnia proper to the sunlit deserts of Calamen, across the stormy straits to the lone islands, and onward to the silver waters at the edge of the world. Each place has its own voice, its own scent, its own story woven into the greater tapestry. Perhaps, if you close your eyes now, you can walk that map in your mind, from the meadows under spring skies, through the lamplit woods, to the harbor where sails catch the dawn, and maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the sound of distant waves calling you toward horizons yet unseen. If you stand in the central square of Narnia at sunrise in spring, the air is alive with voices, not just human voices, but the laughter of otters bartering for fresh-caught trout, the low hum of a bear offering a morning greeting, the lilting song of a skylark explaining the weather to anyone who cares to listen. Narnia is not merely a kingdom, it is a living chorus. Each species, each culture adds its own note, weaving a harmony that shifts with the seasons. Here, the divisions between people and beasts dissolve, replaced by the simple truth that all living things with a voice have a place at the table and a story worth telling. The talking beasts are perhaps the heart of Narnia's identity. From the moment Aslan's breath first stirred their lungs, they were more than their shapes. A lion's roar might carry the weight of a diplomat's speech. A mouse's squeak could hold the precision of a master scholar's lecture. They speak in voices that match their forms. Foxes have quick, darting sentences. Badgers speak with slow, thoughtful weight. Songbirds sing their words as much as they speak them. Yet what unites them is a sense of dignity, not pride in the human sense, but the quiet confidence of creatures who know they were chosen to think, speak, and shape the fate of their world. In society, talking beasts fill every role. Bears as guardians of mountain passes, beavers as master builders of dams and harbors, dogs as heralds who deliver news across great distances. They are farmers, soldiers, poets, and ambassadors. The Council of Beasts, held once every few years in the Great Meadow, gathers representatives of each species to discuss the kingdom's needs and the natural world's health. A scene from such a council might include a heron reporting on river currents, a squirrel presenting the year's nut harvest, and a pair of wolves negotiating the limits of hunting territory to preserve deer populations. It is governance, yes, but also a celebration of shared stewardship. Picture a beaver weaving rush baskets beside a fire, pausing now and then to tell a young otter about the great winter and the return of the kings and queens. Or a tiger, golden eyes glinting, leading a night patrol along the border with Archenland, his voice low as he explains the ancient boundary stones. In Narnia, speech is not what separates beings from beasts, it is what binds all of them together. Half human, half goat, fawns are Narnia's keepers of joy. They are instantly recognizable, curling horns, peeking through thick hair, the lower body of a nimble goat, and eyes that hold both mirth and wisdom. A fawn is rarely seen without a scarf in winter, a lyre or flute at hand, and a readiness to share food, drink, and news. Their culture revolves around music, dance, and storytelling. Fawns believe that joy is a form of resistance against sorrow, a philosophy born from surviving the long winter, when they gathered in hidden glades to dance, quietly under the trees, keeping the memory of warmth alive. Fawns are consummate hosts. An unexpected guest might find themselves seated on a moss-covered bench, a steaming cup of spiced tea pressed into their hands, while a fawn plays a tune that seems to untangle the knots in the listener's heart. They are also travelers, slipping between villages and forests, carrying letters and gossip with equal enthusiasm. In times of trouble, fawns can be fierce, agile in battle, their horns and hooves lending them strength, unexpected from their usually gentle natures. Picture an evening in the lantern waste. Lantern light sways among the pines, illuminating a ring of fawns leaping in intricate steps, their flutes weaving a melody that rises and falls like the wind through branches. Snow begins to fall, yet no one stops dancing. For the fawns, life is a dance, sometimes light, sometimes solemn, but always worth continuing. The centaurs are among Narnia's most revered inhabitants, embodying the union of intellect and strength. With the torso of a human and the body of a great horse, they stand taller than any man, their presence commanding attention even in silence. Centaurs are philosophers, healers, warriors, and astronomers. They do not speak lightly, for each word is weighed against knowledge, both learned and celestial. To them, the night sky is a book written by the hand of the Creator, and they are its tireless readers. On clear nights, they can be found atop hills and ridges, their eyes fixed on the constellations. A centaur might hold a parchment in one hand, jotting down observations with a quill, while explaining to an apprentice the meaning of a red star's sudden brightening. They believe every comet, every planetary shift, signals events of great import. In battle, they are nearly unstoppable, swift, disciplined, and armed with bows that can strike from a distance most soldiers would consider impossible. Yet they do not rush to war. Centaurs fight only when the cause is just, and when the stars themselves seem to give consent. Their culture values discipline, education, and prophecy. Young centaurs are taught the healing arts alongside archery, astronomy alongside poetry. To be a centaur is to bear the weight of history and the responsibility of the future. Imagine standing in a meadow under the cold light of winter stars. A centaur beside you raises his head to the sky, pointing to a cluster of lights with a steady hand. "There," he says, in a voice deep as earth. "The huntress has tilted her bow. The season will change sooner than men expect." And you believe him. Dwarfs are the master craftsmen of Narnia, short and stocky, with thick beards and strong hands. They are as immovable as the mountains they often inhabit. Their fingers seem born to work with metal and stone, producing weapons, jewelry, and mechanisms that last for centuries. There are two main kinds: red dwarfs, cheerful and loyal to the crown, and black dwarfs, who are more secretive and sometimes mistrustful of other races. This division is less about good or evil than it is about temperament and allegiance. Dwarfs have an earthy wit, fond of dry humor and hearty feasts. They brew strong ales, sing songs in low, rumbling harmonies, and tell tales of the deep places beneath the mountains. In their forges, the air is thick with the scent of coal and the ringing rhythm of hammers. Sparks shower the floor as molten metal is coaxed into shape. To a dwarf, there is no greater satisfaction than handing over a perfectly balanced sword or an intricately carved brooch and seeing the recipient's eyes light with appreciation. Though they prefer their own company, dwarfs can be fierce allies. In battle, their axes bite deep, and their armor can withstand blows that would fell others. Picture a forge glowing in the mountain night, a red dwarf standing bare-armed at the anvil, sweat streaking his brow as he shapes a blade destined for a king. He works not for glory, but because the work itself is his joy. Dryads are the spirits of trees. Their form's a blend of human grace and the essence of the tree they inhabit. When their tree is still, they sleep within it. When it stirs, they step forth, skin like bark, hair like leaves in the wind. Naiads are the spirits of rivers, streams, and lakes. Their hair flows like water, and their laughter is the sound of a brook tumbling over stones. They are swift and elusive, vanishing beneath the surface with barely a ripple. Both are deeply tied to the land's health. A sick forest will weaken its dryads. A poisoned river will sadden its naiads. In times of celebration, they emerge to dance and sing, their voices carrying ancient melodies from the world's dawn. Dryads can call on the strength of their trees, roots surging from the ground to defend against invaders. Naiads can stir the currents, guiding boats or pulling them away from danger, or into it, should they wish. Imagine a spring festival. Dryads twirl, their hair shimmering with blossoms. Naiads sing from the shallows, their notes blending with the rustle of leaves. The air is heavy with the scent of sap and fresh rain, and the whole world seems to breathe in time with the music. The Star People are the wanderers of the night sky, beings who once burned as distant lights in the firmament and chose, or were called, to walk the soil of Narnia. They do not fall like meteors. They descend as though stepping down an invisible stair, their forms solidifying in the cool air of evening. In appearance, they are tall and graceful, their skin carrying a faint inner glow, as if lit from beneath by the starlight they once embodied. Their eyes are pools of darkness, speckled with light, mirroring constellations, not always visible to mortal gaze. Even in plain garments, there is something unearthly about the way they move, each gesture deliberate, as though the very air bends to accommodate them. Star People are rare, and their presence often marks a turning point in history. They are drawn to moments of great change, the eve of a battle, the birth of a king, the twilight of an age. Some serve as silent witnesses, others as guides or teachers, offering counsel in voices that seem to carry both the weight of time and the freshness of dawn. They rarely speak of their origins. When pressed, a star person might only smile faintly and say, "The heavens have many roads." Yet their knowledge of the skies, the tides, and the deeper magics of Narnia is unmatched. When their time in the mortal realm ends, they depart as they arrived, quietly. Some are seen walking into the eastern sea until the waves swallow them. Others simply fade with the morning light, leaving only a shimmer in the dew. It is said that to meet a star person is to be changed. Even a brief exchange can plant a thought that grows for a lifetime, guiding one's steps long after the starlight has passed. Calamen. Far to the south lies Calamen, a land of sun-baked cities, golden domes, and endless deserts where the horizon shimmers like molten glass. Its people are masters of eloquence, speaking in flowing poetry that turns even casual conversation into art. Calamans prize honor, hospitality, and the telling of grand tales, often recited in market squares or by firelight in the cool of the evening. Their cavalry is legendary, riding sleek desert stallions bred for both speed and endurance. Warriors wear curved swords that flash like lightning in the sun, their hilts wrapped in dyed silk. Traders bring carpets, spices, and silks to Narnia's southern ports, carrying news and stories along with their goods. Calamine feasts are an assault on the senses. The scent of roasted lamb with saffron, the sight of lanterns swaying over tiled courtyards, the sound of strings and drums keeping time with a storyteller's rising voice. Telmarines. Across the western mountains lies Telmarine territory, a realm shaped more by stone than by sand. Telmarine cities are built like fortresses, their walls high, their gates massive, each street designed with defense in mind. Their architecture speaks of order and permanence, square towers, heavy arches, and narrow windows for watching the horizon. Suspicious of magic, the Telmarines prefer the tangible security of steel and stone, yet their culture is rich in its own way, valuing discipline, loyalty, and military prowess. Festivals are rare but solemn, marked by parades of soldiers and the unveiling of intricate tapestries depicting their history. In both Calamen and Telmar, life moves to a rhythm unlike Narnia's, shaped by their landscapes and their beliefs. Yet when their paths cross, through trade, diplomacy, or war, they leave their mark on the great tapestry of the world. Dawn spills gold across the meadows. In the center of the field, a faun's flute sings the day awake. From the forests come the dryads, stepping lightly as the petals in their hair release the perfume of new blossoms. Naiads rise from the river, their laughter carrying over the water like silver bells. Talking beasts arrive in colorful procession, badgers bearing honeycombs, foxes balancing baskets of berries, doves with ribbons tied to their legs. Dwarfs roll in casks of sweet ale, their cheeks already flushed with cheer. Centaurs stand on a small rise, their gaze lifted to the sky. As the sun climbs, they rid the positions of the stars fading in the light, declaring omens for the season, a bountiful harvest, safe borders, fair weather for travelers. In the evening, the meadow becomes a whirl of light and music. Fauns leap in time with the drums, talking beasts join in the dance, and dryads spin in circles so fast their forms blur back into leafy shapes. Children, human and otherwise, race fireflies, while elders trade stories of past springs. It is not merely a festival, it is the kingdom itself made visible. Every race, every tradition woven together in celebration of the life they share. There are objects in Narnia that are more than mere things. They are gifts that seem to arrive not from chance or convenience, but from the very hand of destiny, and more often than not, from Aslan himself. Each one holds a magic older than the world, a story that lingers in the air around it, and a purpose that reveals itself only in its appointed hour. They do not parade their power. You could walk past them in a crowded hall, or find them buried beneath a pile of winter coats, and never guess what they can do. But when the darkness deepens, when the air tightens with danger, they stir, as if sensing that their moment has come. Think of them as stars in the night sky. They do not burn for you alone, yet at the hour you most need their light, they seem to rise in exactly the right place. And like the constellations, their meaning is written into the deeper fabric of Narnia, in prophecies, in old songs, in the whispered teachings of talking beasts. Tonight, we will walk among them, the horn that calls for aid, the cordial that heals, the stone table that once broke beneath the weight of a deeper law, the solitary lamppost that burns eternal, and the prophecy that broke the witch's winter. Each is a reminder that the greatest magic is not merely in power, but in promise. The horn of Queen Susan the Gentle is one of the most storied treasures in all of Narnia. Curved and gleaming with a silver-white sheen, it is warm in the hand despite the coldest wind, and its surface is chased with delicate engravings, curling vines, stars, and the faint image of a great lion's head near the mouthpiece. To look at it is to feel as though it has been waiting for you for centuries. It came into Susan's keeping on a day that itself felt touched by prophecy, deep in the witch's winter, when the rivers were locked in ice, and even the pines groaned beneath their burden of snow. Father Christmas himself returned to Narnia after 100 years of absence. From the back of his sleigh, he presented the horn to Susan with words she would never forget. "When you put this horn to your lips and blow it, help will come to you, no matter where you are in Narnia, perhaps even beyond." The horn's power is not the magic of compulsion. It does not command aid, nor force a rescuer's hand. Instead, it awakens the deep bonds of loyalty and love that run through Narnia like hidden roots beneath the soil. Its call is clear, silver, and long, echoing over forest and mountain, across the sea, and when needed, between worlds. When Prince Caspian was cornered by the forces of Mirez, he chose to trust an old legend. The note he blew was so pure that talking beasts paused mid-breath. Dryads stirred in their trees, and the stars seemed to lean down to listen. In another world, far away, the Pevensies heard it and were drawn back to Narnia. It is said that the horn only works for those in true need, and that its sound cannot be ignored by any who love the land. Even now, long after Susan's reign, the horn is remembered not just as an artifact of war, but as a symbol of faith, the belief that help will come, even when the night is at its darkest. And perhaps that is its greatest magic, not the summoning itself, but the courage it inspires in those who hear it. Of all the gifts bestowed upon the Pevensies, none glows with such quiet, steadfast grace as Queen Lucy's diamond-shaped bottle of cordial. Crafted from crystal so fine it seems woven from light itself, the vial fits neatly into the palm of her hand. Within it swirls a liquid, the color of molten ruby, alive, shifting in hue from deep crimson to the warm blush of dawn. The cordial was given to Lucy by Father Christmas on that same fateful day in the deep winter, along with a dagger for her own defense. His words were simple but solemn. "One drop from this bottle will cure almost any illness, heal almost any wound. Use it sparingly." Its contents were not merely medicine. The cordial was brewed from the fireflowers that bloom in the sun at the high valleys of the distant mountains beyond the Eastern Ocean. Blossoms said to drink starlight at night and store the first breath of Aslan's song in their petals. To carry such a thing was to carry a piece of the world's first morning. Lucy's first true use of the cordial came after the great battle that broke the witch's winter. The field was thick with the groans of the injured, and without hesitation, she went from one to another, kneeling in the trampled snow, touching the bottle's neck to cracked lips or torn skin. With each drop, warmth spread like sunlight across frost, wounds sealed, eyes brightened, and breath steadied. There is no recorded instance of the cordial failing when given in true need. Yet its magic is not infinite, and perhaps that is part of its wisdom. The cordial teaches that life is precious because it can be lost, and that mercy is most powerful when it is given freely. Even centuries after Lucy's reign, healers still speak of her as the queen with the dawn in her hands. The bottle itself has vanished into the folds of history, but stories persist of travelers who in their darkest hour felt the brush of a warm hand and the taste of sunlight on their lips. Some say that was Lucy herself, still tending the wounded long after her time in Narnia had passed. The stone table stood in the heart of a lonely hilltop clearing, far from the bustle of Caer Paravel or the shelter of the great forests. hewn from a single slab of grey rock so vast that a dozen dwarfs could not have shifted it. The table's surface was worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Along its edges were carved ancient symbols, curling, jagged letters in a language older than Narnia itself, unreadable to most, but thrumming with a strange, silent authority. The table was the heart of the deep magic, the first lore written into the bones of the world. It was not built by hands but brought into being when Aslan sang the stars into the sky. Upon it were inscribed the immutable rules that treachery must be paid for by blood, and that a willing sacrifice of the innocent could atone for the guilty. It was here that the witch Jadis brought Aslan in chains, under a sky heavy with storm clouds and the bitter wind of endless winter. She fulfilled the letter of the deep magic, slaying the lion to claim her victory. The table rang with the sound of the blade, and the forest itself seemed to cry out. By dawn, Aslan's body lay still, and the witch's armies were already marching to crush the last resistance. But the stone table held more than the witch understood. Beneath the deep magic lay a deeper magic, older still, that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in the place of a traitor, the table itself would crack, and death would begin to work backward. At sunrise, the table split in two with a sound like the breaking of the world, and Aslan stood alive once more, radiant in the light of a new day. In later years, the table's broken halves were left as they were, a reminder to all who came after that even the most unyielding law can be overturned by a greater truth, the truth of sacrifice, love, and redemption. Some say that on certain nights, when the moonlight falls just so, you can still hear the faint hum of the ancient letters, whispering to the grass, and the wind the story of that long night and the dawn that followed. At the edge of the lantern waste, in the stillness of snow-laden pines, stands a solitary lamppost. It burns with a steady light, though no one has ever seen it lit, and no wind, no rain, no passing age has dimmed its flame. It was born from an accident, or perhaps a miracle, in the earliest days of Narnia, a fragment of a lamppost from another world, struck from the hands of a fleeing witch, fell onto Narnian soil during its creation. From that fragment grew this eternal light. The lamppost is both a beginning and an ending. It was the first thing Lucy saw when she stumbled through the wardrobe into Narnia, snow crunching under her feet. And it was the last thing she glimpsed before she left that world behind for the first time. It marks a threshold, the meeting place between ordinary life and the extraordinary. Travelers who pass it often feel they are being watched, though never in malice, rather as if the lamppost is a silent guardian, keeping the road lit for those who are meant to find their way. Its flame is not bright enough to light the whole forest, but it is constant. Perhaps that is its truest magic, not in banishing all darkness, but in keeping a promise to never let it win entirely. In the far western woods of Narnia, where the trees grow tall and the snow lies thick in winter, there stands a single iron lamppost. Its black stem rises from the forest floor, with no road or path to mark its purpose, and yet its flame burns eternally, a steady golden light, untouched by wind, rain, or the turning of seasons. To most Narnians, the lamppost is a landmark, a quiet sentinel that has always been there. To the few who know its origin, it is something far stranger, a remnant of another world. On the night Narnia was sung into being, when Aslan's voice rolled across the void and turned darkness into dawn, a fragment of an iron street lamp from London was flung into the newborn land. The witch Jadis, newly torn from her own dying world, had hurled a piece of that foreign object in her rage. But instead of breaking or rusting away, the shard took root in the soft soil. Before the watching eyes of beasts, fauns, and the first kings and queens, it grew, not like metal, but like a living tree, sprouting branches of iron and blooming with a single perfect flame at its crown. From that day on, the lampost's light has never dimmed. In winter, its glow turns the falling snow to a swirl of gold and silver. In summer, it scatters fireflies, that dance in its warm halo. Travelers lost in the forest speak of it as a beacon, a sign they are not entirely forsaken. It was here that Lucy Pevensey first met Mr. Tumnus, stepping through the wardrobe and into the world of Narnia. And it was here, many years later, that she and her siblings returned to their own world, the lamppost, standing as both the first and last sight of their great adventure. Some say the lamppost's flame is fed by the same song that birthed the stars, a reminder that even in the deepest woods, light can come from the most unexpected places. Each artifact, each prophecy, is bound by a single thread, the presence of Aslan. They are not random marvels scattered through the land. They are promises. Some are loud, like the horn's clarion call. Some are silent, like the lamppost's quiet glow. But all appear in the precise moment they are needed, and never a moment before. It is tempting to think of them as tools, but they are more than that. They are reminders, reminders that help will come, that wounds can heal, that death can be undone, that light will burn even in the heart of winter. And in Narnia, these reminders are not mere symbols, they are living parts of its story, woven into the tapestry of its ages. You might pass them without knowing their worth, until the day they choose to speak to you. In that way, they are much like Aslan himself, not always visible, not always where we expect, but always exactly where we most need him to be. Economy and daily life, agriculture and foodways. Life in Narnia, for all its wonders and enchantments, is rooted in the soil. The rhythms of the kingdom are defined not by kings' decrees or noble quarrels, but by the sowing of fields, the tending of flocks, and the gathering of harvests. Step into almost any Narnian village, and you will hear the same sounds that echoed across medieval Earth. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children chasing geese through stubble fields, the rumble of carts carrying sheaves of barley to the communal barn. Yet there is something gentler here, something lifted beyond mere survival. The Narnians farm not only for bread, but for fellowship, for gratitude, and for joy in the gifts of Aslan. The staples are the grains, wheat, barley, and oats. Fields stretch in gentle undulations across the heartlands, golden in summer, brown and sleeping in winter, speckled with bright wildflowers in spring. Farmers still plow with oxen and wooden plowshares, though dwarvish iron tools have made the work easier in recent generations. In more fertile river valleys, the land yields so richly that surplus grain must be stored in silos built by beavers, whose dam-building talents extend naturally to such architecture. Bread is the staff of life, baked in clay ovens set at the edge of villages, where neighbors gather in the morning to gossip as loaves rise, their fragrance carried on the breeze. Livestock is tended with equal care. Sheep graze on upland pastures, their wool clipped in springtime festivals of music and laughter, and woven into the warm garments that Narnians wear through long winters. Cattle provide milk, cheese, and beef for feasts. Oxen double as draft animals in the fields. Chickens scratch in every yard, geese guard every pond, and pigs root happily in the forest margins until the feasting season arrives. Yet even in slaughter, there is ritual. Narnians offer thanks aloud, recognizing that meat comes at a cost. It is a paradox unique to this world, that talking beasts live alongside their non-speaking kin. Few Narnians will eat a talking stag or goose. Such would be unthinkable, akin to murder, but hunting of wild deer, boar, or birds remains communal tradition. In these moments, even talking hounds and boars join the chase, exulting in the thrill of the pursuit as sport, not cruelty. The meat of such hunts is shared equally among households, roasted on spits in village greens, while the air fills with song. Fruit and vegetables are equally abundant, especially in glades blessed by Aslan's presence. Orchards bear apples, pears, and plums that seem juicier than Earth's cousins, often ripening overnight after a single prayer. Legends tell of trees planted by Aslan himself in the first days. They bore instant fruit, not subject to seasons, as a sign of his provision. Some of these ancient groves remain hidden, guarded by dryads, and whispered of in children's tales. Farmers also tend gardens of beans, carrots, cabbages, and herbs, though they accept with cheerful humility that nature sometimes gives more than toil ever could. The marshes of the north yield waterfowl, eggs, and reeds. The southern forests provide berries, chestnuts, and honey. Few in Narnia go hungry unless war or winter strikes, for the land itself is hospitable. Each region develops its own specialties. Leversdam became famous for its grain reserves, ensuring that lean years in one valley could be cushioned by surpluses elsewhere. Archenland merchants delight in Narnian preserves, jars of sugared fruits and honeyed nuts brought over the mountain passes. The great river fisheries provide trout and salmon that grace Caer Paravel's tables, while inland villages dry and smoke fish to last through the cold season. In the far west, goat herders produce pungent cheeses traded in border markets. All of this weaves together into a rich tapestry of foodways, a network of sustenance that binds Narnian communities as much as any crown or law. Meals themselves are social rituals. Few Narnians dine alone if they can help it. In farmsteads, neighbors gather for midday stews of barley and rabbit. In cities, markets spill into streets where bread, roasted chestnuts, and mulled cider are sold from carts. At twilight, families share stories by the hearth as pots of venison or pigeon pie bubble. Hospitality is sacred. A stranger at the door is always invited to the table, fed before questioned. It is said that Aslan himself once walked disguised as a weary traveler, and that those who turned him away bore misfortune for years after. Thus, generosity became cultural law. Drinks too reflect the land. Mead made from forest honey is the most common, golden and sweet, consumed at weddings and feasts alike. River valleys produce a light wine, sometimes enchanted, to never sour. Ale brewed by dwarves is strong, smoky, and best taken with caution. Fauns have been known to dance for days after a few mugs. Ciders from apple orchards flow at autumn festivals, and clear spring water, chilled by snowmelt, remains the most refreshing drink of all. There is, finally, the mystical element, food that appears by grace rather than labor. Tales abound of picnics laid out by unseen hands, of banquets appearing in empty halls when a weary traveler whispers a prayer. These moments are rare, never to be demanded, but they serve as reminders that the economy of Narnia is not mere toil and exchange. It is participation in a larger rhythm of gift and gratitude. Every meal, from the humblest crust of bread to the grandest royal banquet, becomes an act of communion between neighbors, between peoples, and ultimately between creation and its creator. Thus, agriculture and foodways in Narnia are more than subsistence. They are the daily sacraments of a world where soil and spirit meet. Trade and exchange. If agriculture is the heartbeat of Narnia, trade is its bloodstream, carrying goods, ideas, and alliances through the kingdom and beyond. Though Narnia is not an empire of sprawling markets like Calaman, its trading culture is robust, characterized by seasonal fairs, neighborly exchange, and long caravans that wend through mountains and rivers. The land produces more than it consumes, and so the flow of goods outward, grain, timber, wine, and crafted wares, binds Narnia into the economic fabric of its neighbors. Trade with the Lone Islands stands foremost in importance. These islands, lying far to the east, were long under Narnian dominion and remain client states, governed by their own lords, but paying tribute to Caer Paravel. Their exports are exotic by Narnian standards: cotton spun into bright fabrics, spices with scents unknown in northern kitchens, and silks dyed in dazzling colors. In return, they rely on Narnian grain, livestock, and especially metalwork. Iron mined in Narnian hills and forged by dwarves travels by ship to Narrowhaven, where islanders marvel at the craftsmanship. This exchange not only enriches both sides, but cements political loyalty. The Lone Islanders know that without Narnia's steady supply of food and steel, their prosperity would falter. To the south lies Calomen, a great and wary power. Relations have often been uneasy. Wars and skirmishes smolder across the centuries, but trade has never fully ceased. From Calomen come fine textiles woven in desert cities, strong horses bred for endurance, and luxuries like dates, oils, and perfumes. Narnians provide in return timber for ships, northern furs, and casks of strong wine. The balance of trust is delicate. Narnian envoys in Tashban tread cautiously, wary of insult or deception, yet the allure of Calomen wares ensures that caravans still set out each season. In the border towns near Archenland, Calomen crescent coins circulate alongside Narnian barter, a quiet sign of economic intermingling despite political tension. With Archenland, however, trade is fraternal and constant. The mountain kingdom to the south is bound to Narnia, not only by treaties, but by kinship. Archenland supplies salt from its mines, sturdy mountain horses, and stone fit for fortresses, while Narnia sends grain, fruit, and crafted tools. Roads through the passes bustle with mule caravans and heralds, so that goods and news travel hand in hand. It is common for Narnian villagers to know the names of Archenland merchants personally, for these relationships span generations. A merchant might drink in a Narnian tavern, where his grandfather once shared a meal 50 years earlier, welcomed by the same family. River trade is vital within Narnia itself. The Great River serves as a highway, barges loaded with barrels of cider, crates of apples, or even live sheep floating downstream to Caer Paravel. Along its banks rise bustling river towns, where ferrymen earn their living shuttling goods and passengers. Villagers treat the river as both lifeline and marketplace. Inns at ferry crossings teem with gossip, songs, and deals, struck over tankards of ale. By nightfall, torches light up the decks of moored barges, their cargo guarded by watchful dogs and dwarves. Markets within Narnia are vibrant affairs. Weekly village markets offer not only farm produce, but woven cloth, wooden toys, carved instruments, and enchanted curiosities. Coins are rare in the countryside. Barter remains the norm, wool for fish, apples for lamp oil. Yet in towns, minted coin circulates, stamped with the crowns of reigning monarchs. At seasonal fairs, wealthier merchants gather, displaying imported wares, Calamine spices, Lone Island silks, or even trinkets said to come from lands farther still. Such fairs become carnivals of color, sound, and taste. Jugglers perform, minstrels sing, children chase each other through the stalls, while deals are struck in shadowed corners. Rumors swirl of even grander markets, the annual fairs of Tashban, where the Tisrock's merchants display goods from across the desert empire. Narnians send envoys there, curious yet cautious. They return with tales of endless streets of silk, towers lined with lamps, and markets that stretch for miles. These reports stir the imagination, but also suspicion. What power underlies such wealth? Thus, trade serves as both bridge and mirror, showing Narnians what lies beyond their borders and reminding them of their own simpler rhythms. What makes Narnian trade unique is the blend of the mundane and the magical. A caravan may carry barrels of salted pork alongside a charm-forged sword. A dwarvish merchant might haggle fiercely over the price of wool, then offer a token enchanted to keep it free from moths. Even coins sometimes hold subtle enchantments. Rumors persist of pieces that warm when a liar touches them, or that always roll back toward their rightful owner if stolen. Whether true or not, these stories add mystique to everyday exchange, reminding traders that in Narnia, commerce is never only about goods, but about trust, story, and wonder. In the end, trade binds Narnia to its neighbors, but also reveals its character. The Narnians are neither isolationist nor imperial. They trade generously, yet cautiously, aware that prosperity requires both openness and vigilance. Their markets are not merely economic centers, but social ones, where alliances are forged, strangers welcomed, and the world's diversity glimpsed in cloth, spice, and song. Through trade, the kingdom breathes outward, connecting the quiet rhythm of its farms to the vast and varied tapestry of the world beyond. Crafts, technology, and magic. Narnia's technological level, at first glance, mirrors that of a medieval kingdom. Steel swords, wooden carts, and wind-blown ships form the framework of daily life. Yet to stop there would be misleading, for Narnia is not merely a feudal realm with talking beasts. Its crafts are shaped by diversity. Dwarfs, fauns, beavers, dryads, and men alike contribute skills that, woven together, create a society far richer and stranger than any simple medieval counterpart. And beyond technology lies magic, subtle but pervasive, that both supplements and transforms craft. Dwarven mastery. At the center of Narnian craftsmanship stand the dwarfs. Renowned as smiths, miners, and jewelers, dwarfs embody precision and artistry. They forged the first crown for King Frank and have maintained the tradition of making regalia ever since. Their forges ring with the sound of hammers striking anvils deep underground, lit by coal fires that glow red against stone walls. Dwarfs fashion not only swords and armor, but also locks, hinges, lanterns, and intricate devices. Some suggest they could have pursued more advanced inventions, water clocks, crossbows, even rudimentary gunpowder, had Aslan not willed Narnia to remain a land of simplicity rather than engines of war. Instead, dwarfs pour their genius into perfecting craft rather than multiplying technology. A dwarven sword is not merely a weapon, but a work of art, balanced so precisely that it sings when drawn from its scabbard. Beasts and their talents. Other creatures bring their own unique crafts. Beavers, famously industrious, build dams and homes that rival human engineering. Their wooden constructions, reinforced with stone, manage rivers and create fisheries. Talking mice carve delicate miniatures, bows no larger than a hand's span, yet functional in battle. Horses too contribute. The talking steeds of Narnia are breeders and trainers of their own kind, ensuring cavalry mounts of unmatched speed and endurance. Thus, every species enriches the kingdom's technology, blending the natural instincts of animals with the deliberate skill of artisans. Human craft and Telmarine influence. Human craftsmen, particularly under Telmarine influence, introduced refinements foreign to early Narnia. Telmarines brought castle architecture of stone keeps, watermills to grind grain, and techniques for large-scale shipbuilding. Many of these technologies persisted after their decline, integrated into Narnian society, but softened by native sensibilities. A Telmarine-style fortress might rise beside a faun village, its stone towers softened by flowering vines that dryads coax to climb its walls. Such syncretism defines Narnian technology, always practical, yet never divorced from the living land. Agriculture and tools. In everyday life, tools reflect the balance of pragmatism and artistry. Plows are wooden, sometimes tipped with iron and pulled by oxen or even willing talking beasts. Hoes, scythes, and sickles resemble those of medieval Europe, yet in Narnia, they may be etched with dwarvish runes of durability, lasting for generations. Carpenters craft wagons, wheels, and beams for houses, while stonemasons quarry blocks for bridges and walls. Every object, from a child's toy to a knight's helm, carries a touch of personality, for in a land where animals speak and trees listen, it is natural to treat tools as companions rather than lifeless instruments. The role of magic, yet what elevates Narnian craft above its medieval counterpart, is the presence of magic. Magic, in Narnia, is rarely industrialized. There are no mass-produced enchanted weapons, but rather artisanal, unique, and intimate. A lamppost may sprout from a fragment of a star, burning forever, without oil. A sword may whisper courage to its wielder, but only in moments of dire need. Healing herbs grow in hidden glades, where dryads guard them. ensuring only the worthy may harvest. Such enchantments are woven lightly into daily life, seldom overwhelming, but always reminding Narnians that the land itself is enchanted. Enchanted items are few, but treasured. The cordial of Queen Lucy, filled with the juice of a fireflower, heals any wound. Horns may call aid across vast distances. Cloaks may warm their wearer in any weather. These objects are not manufactured in workshops, but bestowed by Aslan or by ancient powers. Thus, Narnians view magic not as a tool to master, but as a gift to be received. Limits of technology. It is notable that Narnia never develops into a mechanized society. No gunpowder, no factories, no engines emerge. Whether by design of Aslan or by the ethos of its people, Narnia remains bound to handcraft, natural rhythms, and the intimacy of artisanal labor. Scholars speculate that this limitation is protective. Mechanization could fracture the delicate harmony of talking beasts, humans, and nature. A cannon might devastate a dryad's grove. A loom powered by steam could enslave animals meant to be free. By keeping technology medieval, Narnia ensures that every advance remains rooted in personal skill, community, and respect for the land. The symbolism of craft. Craft in Narnia is never purely economic. It is also symbolic. A crown forged by dwarfs represents not only monarchy, but the alliance of species. A beaver dam is not merely a habitat, but a testament to industriousness and cooperation. A child's wooden toy, carved by a talking mouse, embodies joy, play, and innocence. Thus, every crafted object carries narrative weight, binding the kingdom together, not just in economy, but in meaning. In summary, Narnian crafts and technology embody a paradox, medieval in form, yet transcendent in spirit. Where Earth's medieval societies strained toward mechanical progress, Narnia instead deepened artistry, community, and magic. Every sword, every dam, every carved trinket affirms a worldview where skill and wonder coexist. And so the crafts of Narnia do more than sustain life. They express its essence. Festivals and celebrations. Life in Narnia, though marked by toil in fields and forests, is also punctuated by moments of shared joy. Festivals stand as the heartbeat of Narnian culture, drawing together humans, beasts, dwarfs, fauns, and talking animals into communal acts of celebration. They reflect both the natural rhythms of the land and the deeper spiritual currents of Aslan's presence. The Autumn Feast. The greatest of these is the Autumn Feast, instituted during the reign of the High King Peter. As harvests were gathered, Narnians would assemble in vast meadows, laying out long tables piled with roasted bullock, venison, peacock, rabbits, and baskets of apples, pears, and nuts. Wine flowed freely, and minstrels played flutes, drums, and lyres, while dryads wove garlands of golden leaves. It was not merely a feast of food, but of fellowship, uniting all species in gratitude. Fauns danced, dwarfs told tales of ancient kings, and mice performed miniature plays with squeaking voices. At times, even centaurs, usually reserved and solemn, would declaim prophecies between courses, reminding all that history bent toward Aslan's design. The Autumn Feast symbolized abundance and community, an affirmation that the land itself rejoiced with its people. The Winter Feast, return of Christmas. Equally significant is the Winter Feast, which in human lands would be called Christmas. During the witches' 100-year winter, this festival vanished, banned and nearly forgotten. Its return, heralded by Father Christmas himself, became a potent symbol of liberation. Ever since, Narnians mark the winter solstice with warmth and goodwill. Gifts are exchanged, not only among families, but between species. Dwarfs present forged trinkets to beavers, fauns deliver wines to centaurs, and humans offer bread baked with honey to mice. At night, lanterns are hung from trees, glowing like stars in the frozen air, while choirs of birds sing hymns to Aslan's coming. The feast reminds all of Narnia's darkest trial and its miraculous deliverance. Coronation anniversaries. When kings and queens are crowned, their reigns are remembered each year with coronation anniversaries. These occasions feature processions through Caer Paravel's courtyards, with banners carried by eagles and trumpets sounded by fauns. Talking beasts march in ordered ranks, demonstrating unity across the realm. Knights of Archenland sometimes attend, reaffirming bonds of alliance. Ordinary villagers travel by barge along the great river to witness the parades, turning the day into a fair of music, games, and shared meals. Such anniversaries are more than personal tributes. They reaffirm Narnia's covenant with its rulers, who reign not by conquest, but under Aslan's blessing. The Green Fest, renewal of spring. Perhaps the most enchanting celebration is the Green Fest, held each spring when the snows melt and the earth reawakens. Beasts gather in meadows where trees literally dance, branches swaying to invisible music. Flowers bloom in sudden waves, their voices joining in chorus. Children crown themselves with daisy chains, while naiads rise from streams to scatter sprays of water that sparkle like jewels in sunlight. It is a day of renewal, where the boundaries between natural and supernatural blur most vividly. Narnians believe that during Greenfest, Aslan walks unseen among them, blessing fields and hearts alike with vitality. Regional and cultural variations. Festivals also vary across regions. In the northern marshes, marshwiggles celebrate with quiet, somber gatherings, roasting fish over low fires while telling grimly humorous tales. In Archenland, nightly tournaments often coincide with Narnian feasts, creating spectacles of jousting and horseback games. Calamine influence is seen in some border towns, where market fairs adopt foreign spices, silks, and music, blending with native traditions. Thus, Narnian festivals are not static, but living, adapting to encounters with neighbors, while retaining their core, gratitude to Aslan, and joy in shared community. Symbolism and meaning. Festivals in Narnia are not merely distractions from labor, but enactments of the land's theology. Every feast points to a truth: harvests as gifts of providence, winter as redeemed through grace, spring as renewal of life, and coronations as a reflection of divine order. Narnians understand instinctively that celebration is itself a form of worship. Even laughter, music, and dance become sacred acts when offered in recognition of Aslan's care. The absence of festivals under tyranny. The contrast is stark when festivals are suppressed. Under the White Witch, winter stretched unbroken, a season without joy. Under Telmarine rule, fear and suspicion dampened public gatherings. These absences etched deep scars into Narnian memory, teaching them that joy is not guaranteed, but must be guarded. Thus, every festival after liberation carries an undercurrent of defiance, a reminder that community and faith must outlast oppression. Festivals and celebrations embody the rhythm of Narnian life. They mark time, sanctify labor, and bind diverse peoples into one fellowship. Each feast, from the grand autumn harvest to the tender renewal of Greenfest, weaves together the mundane and the miraculous. In Narnia, to celebrate is to live truthfully, in gratitude, in joy, and in hope that Aslan is ever on the move. Festivals of faith and religious rituals. While Narnian life is rooted in the soil of fields and the rhythm of seasons, its deepest celebrations are those of faith. Beneath the music, dancing, and banquets lies a spiritual consciousness. Every gift, every moment of joy flows from Aslan. Thus, festivals of faith do not simply mark time, they reaffirm the covenant between creator and creation, between the great lion and his people. Worship beyond temples. Unlike Calamen or earthly kingdoms, Narnia possesses no great cathedrals or temples. Its worship is conducted under the open sky, where trees sway like choirs and rivers murmur hymns. A simple glade, a hilltop, or the steps of Caer Paravel may serve as holy ground. What matters is not the place, but the presence. Narnians believe that Aslan's spirit infuses all creation, so worship can arise wherever creatures gather in reverence. Fauns with panpipes, dwarfs with drums, and birds in chorus create services of music more alive than stone altars could contain. The Dawn Vigil. One of the oldest religious rituals is the Dawn Vigil. On the first morning of spring, Narnians climb hills or gather by the sea to watch the sun rise, singing hymns as light breaks over the land. The vigil is both a remembrance of creation and an anticipation of Aslan's return. It is said that in ancient days, Aslan himself appeared during these vigils, his roar ushering in a new age. Even when he is absent, the ritual sustains hope. The sunrise becomes a symbol of eternal renewal. The Great Thanksgiving. Another sacred festival is the Great Thanksgiving, held after the autumn feast. Unlike the feasting and revelry of harvest banquets, this observance is solemn. Narnians bring first fruits of grain, meat, and fruit to be shared freely among the poor, the widowed, and wandering creatures. In some villages, a portion of the harvest is buried in the earth, with prayers acknowledging Aslan as the giver of life and pledging to care for the land in return. This ritual echoes the deeper truth that prosperity without gratitude soon rots into greed, while offerings sustain harmony between people and creation. Commemorations of deliverance. Faith is also expressed in commemorations of deliverance. The end of the witches' winter, the breaking of Telmarine tyranny, and victories in great wars are all marked annually. These are not triumphalist parades, but acts of remembrance, much like Passover in earthly tradition. Narnians retell the stories, often in plays or recitations, so that children know how Aslan intervened in history. During the witches' deliverance celebration, a white stone is sometimes smashed ceremonially, recalling the stone table broken by Aslan's resurrection. Such festivals keep memory alive, ensuring tyranny is never forgotten and freedom never taken for granted. Pilgrimages and sacred sites. Though no temples exist, there are sacred sites scattered across the land. The stone table, even after it was broken, remained a place of pilgrimage. The lamppost in Lantern Waste, marking the boundary between worlds, is visited with reverence. Cair Paravel itself is both palace and sanctuary. Pilgrimages to these places are undertaken in small groups, often as acts of thanksgiving or vows of service. A talking stag might guide pilgrims through forest paths, or a marshwiggle might serve as companion in prayerful silence. These journeys teach humility and dependence on Aslan's guidance. Blending of cultures. Religious rituals also reflect cultural exchanges. Archenland, sharing kinship with Narnia, sometimes celebrates Easter-like feasts, recalling tales of a lamb sacrificed and restored. Narnians incorporate such stories into their own rituals, seeing them as reflections of Aslan's truth. In border towns influenced by Calormen, traders may invoke Tash, but Narnians quietly respond with prayers to Aslan, affirming their distinct faith. These cultural intersections deepen Narnian spirituality. Instead of rigid uniformity, there is a symphony of voices, each pointing back to the Great Lion's sovereignty. Everyday rituals. Beyond grand festivals, faith permeates daily life through small rituals. Meals begin with blessings. May Aslan guard the hands that fed us. Hunters thank slain beasts for their gift of sustenance. Farmers carve Aslan's mark into barn doors at winter's onset, trusting his protection. Sailors on the Great Eastern Sea toss wreaths into the water, invoking his watch over their voyage. Such rituals root spirituality into the fabric of living, preventing faith from being confined to holidays alone. Symbolism of music and story. Perhaps the most distinctively Narnian religious expression is through music and storytelling. Songs recount creation, when Aslan sang the stars into being. Ballads describe his battles and his laughter in meadows. Children grow up learning these songs as naturally as speech, making theology part of memory and joy. Stories told around fires blend myth and truth, ensuring that even in dark times, hope survives. In Narnia, art itself becomes liturgy. Faith under oppression. When tyranny reigns, faith becomes clandestine, but never dies. During the witch's reign, Narnians whispered hymns in caves, their voices mingling with the drip of stone. During Telmarine occupation, festivals of faith were hidden in forests, guarded by centaurs with drawn bows. These secret gatherings testify to a profound resilience. No oppressor can silence the music of Aslan. Indeed, the very act of worship under danger becomes an act of rebellion, a declaration that power belongs not to tyrants, but to the lion whose roar will one day return. Festivals of faith and rituals of devotion reveal the spiritual heart of Narnian society. They are not separate from politics or agriculture, but intertwined with every field, battle, and feast. In the dawn vigil's sunrise, the great Thanksgiving's offerings, and the whispered songs of oppressed times, Narnians affirm that their lives are not their own, but gifts within Aslan's greater story. Celebration thus becomes communion, ritual becomes resistance, and every act of worship reminds the world, Aslan is not a distant deity, but the ever-present Lord of Narnia. From the furrows of its fields to the firelit joy of its feasts, Narnian daily life pulses with a rhythm that is both ordinary and enchanted. Grain, trade, and craftsmanship keep bellies full and kingdoms steady. Yet music, festivals, and faith bind Narnians to one another and to Aslan in ways no ledger can measure. Even their struggles, cryosleep nightmares, harvest failures, or years under foreign rule, become threads woven into a larger story of resilience. To live in Narnia is to dwell in a world where the simplest act of sowing seed or sharing bread resonates with sacred meaning. And yet, beneath these familiar rhythms, deeper mysteries stir, questions of time, destiny, and Aslan's hidden plan await in the chapters beyond. Opening invocation, entering the unknown. Every land tells its own history in stone and song, in crowns and battles. Yet in Narnia, one quickly learns that history is only the surface. Beneath the chronicles of kings and the tallies of harvests lie questions no bard nor scholar has ever answered. They are not hidden because no one looked, but because they may never have been meant to be answered at all. For in Narnia, mystery is not an absence of knowledge, but a presence, a living thread that binds the world together. The farmer tilling his oats, the dwarf hammering iron in the forge, the faun who dances under moonlight, all live beneath the same sky, yet all know there are regions of their world and truths of their faith that defy the neat borders of maps and calendars. Four mysteries rise above the rest, like mountains in a mist. First is time itself, which bends and breaks its own rules. Children reign for decades and return unchanged. Moments pass differently from one world to another, and whole ages seem to fold into seconds. Second is Aslan, the great lion, whose paw marks creation, whose breath redeems, and whose roar closes the age, yet who comes and goes with a freedom no one dares predict. Third are the edges of the world, where seas of lilies stretch into eternity, and mountains glow with impossible light. Voyagers return speaking, as if they had glimpsed eternity, and some never return at all. Finally, there is the mystery of the other worlds, Charn, Earth, the wood between worlds, realms that brush against Narnia's story, like shadows crossing a firelit wall, reminding Narnians that their own world is but one verse in a longer song. To study these mysteries is not to explain them away, but to dwell in their presence. It is to kneel at the edge of knowledge and peer across a horizon where reason yields to wonder. And so we step softly, for in what follows we are not historians, but pilgrims, walking paths that wind between awe and silence, tracing the hidden heartbeat of Narnia itself. The nature of time, Aslan's servant, not master. Among the first lessons a traveler in Narnia learns is that time here does not flow as it does on Earth. At first, this difference may appear like a curious accident, an oddity of magic or enchantment. But with each story, with each return of Aslan, it becomes clearer that Narnian time is not broken. It is ordered by a higher will, and its rhythm obeys no clock known to mortals. 1. Time sips in even river. When the Pevensey children first entered through the wardrobe, they spent what seemed like years, indeed lifetimes, in Narnia. They grew into kings and queens, ruled a flourishing kingdom, and witnessed a golden age. Yet when they returned to England, it was as though they had stepped out only moments after they entered. Their crowns, their castles, and the long decades of memory dissolved into the folds of a single second. The lesson was unsettling. Time does not keep equal pace between worlds. A day in England may be a decade in Narnia. A century in Narnia may pass unnoticed in our world. Sometimes the balance is reversed. A year might slip by on Earth, while only weeks ripple through Narnia's rivers and meadows. There is no map, no rule to calculate the ratio. Instead, Narnians accept what earthly scholars often resist, that time is not fixed, but fluid, and its direction is not its own. 2. Aslan's dominion over Chronos. In Narnian belief, this strange flow of time is no mere accident of physics. It is testimony that time itself serves Aslan. They whisper that even Father Time, that ancient giant who slumbers beneath the earth, waits for Aslan's final call. When that trumpet sounds, the great figure will rise, unbind the stars, and close the book of ages. Thus Narnians live not with the illusion that time controls them, but with the quiet knowledge that time is itself a servant. Seasons turn not because they must, but because Aslan wills that the spring return after winter, that death be followed by rebirth. The witch once held Narnia in an endless frost, yet the spell could not last forever, for Aslan's deeper magic, the pulse of true time, thawed the land and restored the seasons. 3. Mercy in the mystery. Why then does time pass differently between Narnia and Earth? Many Narnians believe it is an act of mercy, with the children who served Narnia to age at the same rate as their reigns. They would return to Earth as old men and women, cut off from their families forever. Instead, Aslan ensures that they return as children, carrying wisdom in their hearts, yet spared the sorrow of lost years. Others whisper a deeper mystery, that time is folded by Aslan, so that no good thing is lost. The decades the Pevensies ruled were not illusions, they were real, and the love, justice, and mercy they gave in that age ripple forward in Narnian memory. Yet Earth was shielded from loss, so their parents would find them unchanged. Thus, time bends not as a cruel trick, but as an act of love, keeping harmony between two worlds destined to touch only briefly. 4. Legends of time sips bending. The Chronicles of Narnia contain other marvels. Caspian the seafarer returned from a single voyage, aged far beyond his years, though his companions swore they had only been gone a handful of months. On another occasion, a sleepy faun awoke after a single night's rest to find that centuries had passed and new kings ruled the land. Such tales are not treated as errors in storytelling, but as reminders that mortals cannot master time's current. Even in prophecy, time behaves strangely. A vision might speak of events centuries away, yet they arrive with a suddenness that feels immediate. Narnians often say that prophecy is not about when, but about who and why. In other words, time does not measure destiny, Aslan's will does. 5. Living with the flow. For Narnians, this knowledge cultivates a culture of presence. The talking beasts graze, the dryads dance, and the kings rule, but always with an openness to change. They do not cling to the illusion that tomorrow will arrive on schedule, for they know it may arrive too quickly or not at all. Instead, they live with gratitude for the day given and courage to face the unknown horizon. For earthly readers, this might appear as a loss of security, but for Narnians, it is liberation. They are not shackled by the fear of lost time, nor obsessed with preserving every moment. Instead, they trust that Aslan keeps what matters safe, even across centuries, even across worlds. 6. Time Sep's final secret. And yet, beyond these legends and beliefs, there is always a lingering question: what is time's final purpose? Narnians say only this, that when the end comes, time will fold like a scroll, and Aslan will reveal the greater story that all moments belong to. Every feast, every battle, every song of the trees will be shown to be part of a larger music, one no mortal ear has yet heard in full. Thus, to dwell in Narnia is to live within a paradox. Time both hurries and lingers, both wounds and heals, both takes and gives back. It cannot be measured, only trusted. For Aslan is on the move, and where he walks, even time must bow. The role of Aslan: creator, savior, judge. No account of Narnia's mysteries can be complete without dwelling upon Aslan. If time is the great river in which all worlds are swept, then Aslan is the source from which the river springs. To the Narnians, he is not a myth, not a distant abstraction, but the living heartbeat of their world, the lion whose roar created their first morning, whose breath restores withered fields, whose judgment ends tyrannies, and whose mercy forgives even the gravest betrayal. 1. The Lion of Creation. The story of Narnia's beginning is sung rather than told. In the silent void, when the world was not yet formed, Aslan sang. His voice rang out like a symphony of power and beauty, and in response, hills lifted, rivers carved their paths, and stars burned in the firmament. Grass sprang beneath his paws, and creatures rose at his bidding, each called by name into life. What other worlds were formed in this way, no one knows. But Narnians remember that their very existence began not in violence or accident, but in song, a song still echoing in the bones of the land. The bees hum it faintly when they swarm, the sea carries it in the rhythm of its waves. Creation itself is not mute, but musical, and its composer is the lion who stands outside yet also within. 2. Savior in the midst of suffering. Yet Aslan is not only the creator who set the world spinning and then departed. He enters his own creation, walking among his children in their times of deepest peril. When the witch's reign of winter threatened to snuff out joy forever, it was Aslan who returned. When a traitor's blood called for sacrifice, it was Aslan who laid himself down upon the stone table, bound by ropes, mocked and shorn, slain by cruel hands. But death could not hold him. From beyond the veil, deeper magic stirred, a magic older than the witch's claim. He rose, not in vengeance, but in triumph, breaking death itself, and offering forgiveness to those who had faltered. In that act, Narnians learn the pattern that repeats across their history: when despair grows thickest, when hope dwindles to embers, Aslan comes, not always early, never too late, but precisely when the story demands it. 3. The just judge. Still, mercy does not mean indulgence. Aslan is not only the savior, but also the judge. When tyrants seize crowns not theirs, when the proud raise themselves above the humble, Aslan's roar unmasks them. Entire dynasties have crumbled when he walked through their courts, for in his presence no lie can stand. Judgment may take many forms. Sometimes it is direct, armies scattered, false kings unseated. Other times it is quiet, a mirror held to the heart, a whisper that unmasks secret sin. To stand before Aslan is to see oneself as one truly is. Some, like Edmund, weep and are forgiven. Others, like the witch or Rabadash, resist and are broken by their own stubbornness. As Narnians often say, Aslan is not safe, but he is good. 4. The giver of freedom. Curiously, Aslan does not control his people like puppets. Though he is all-powerful, he grants freedom, even the freedom to rebel, to betray, to wound. The Pevensies might have refused their crowns. Edmund did betray his siblings. Countless Narnians have chosen greed or cowardice. And yet, within that freedom, Aslan works. He turns treachery into redemption, fear into courage, weakness into strength. This paradox, that the lion who is king permits choice, is central to Narnian faith. It is why their loyalty is genuine, their love true. They are not compelled to serve, they are invited. To answer is to step into harmony with the greater song, and to refuse is to fall into discord. But the choice is always real, always honored. 5. Signs of his presence. Aslan does not always appear in visible form. Sometimes he is a whisper in the forest, sometimes a warmth in the heart, sometimes a rumor. Aslan is on the move. The phrase is enough to quicken courage in a soldier or comfort a child at night. His coming is rarely predictable. He may vanish for generations, leaving Narnians to wonder if he is gone forever. Yet at the moment of greatest need, he arrives, not because mortals summoned him, but because his will governs the turning of history. In this, Narnians learn patience. They do not demand, whereas Aslan, but rather wait, trusting that when the time is ripe, he will come. 6. The hope of Aslan sits country. Above all, Aslan is not bound to Narnia alone. He speaks of his own land, a country beyond the sea, at the edge of the world, where green fields shine brighter than gold and mountains rise beyond the reach of clouds. There, the final fulfillment awaits, where Narnians will discover that their own world was but a shadow, a reflection of a greater reality. This promise sustains them through sorrow and war, for even when castles fall and dynasties end, even when time itself folds, they know Aslan's country endures. To walk with him, there is the hope of every faithful heart, the assurance that the story does not end in dust, but in dawn. Closing note on Aslan Sip's role. Thus, Aslan is creator, savior, and judge, but never distant. He is both king and companion, both fierce and tender. To Narnians, the question is not whether Aslan exists. They have seen his pawprints on the snow, heard his roar in the storm, but whether they will follow when he calls. For in the end, All of Narnia's history, all its wars and feasts, all its mysteries of time and space, pivot upon the movement of the lion. The world sits edges, seas, wastes, and the utter east. Every map of Narnia is incomplete. Lines end where the parchment itself runs out, but the imagination stretches further into lands of rumor and wonder. The heart of the kingdom is known, its forests, rivers, and mountains. But beyond those borders lie regions scarcely explored, described in fragments of sailors' tales, old ballads, and half-believed chronicles. These outer reaches of Narnia's world are both real geography and spiritual symbol, thresholds where the ordinary touches the eternal. One, the northern and western wastes. To the north stretch frozen barrens, wild and unyielding. Travelers who venture into the wastes tell of blizzards that erase footprints within moments, of glaciers creaking like ancient beasts, and of mountains so high their peaks vanish into storm clouds. Even the talking beasts grow silent there, for it is said these lands were never truly meant for habitation. Giants, however, wander the cold plateaus, clumsy and quarrelsome, their feasts leaving bones scattered like forests of white pillars. The western lands are scarcely kinder. Beyond Archenland and the mountain passes lies an expanse of desolate terrain, gorges carved by unknown forces, valleys where no bird sings, and cliffs hammered endlessly by a storm-tossed sea. Few ships attempt to sail these western waters, for their winds are unpredictable and their rocks sharp as knives. Some claim ruins lie hidden there, remnants of ancient peoples, before Aslan's song called the world into fullness. If true, they are tombs more than homesteads, reminders that not every corner of creation was meant to flourish. 2. The Great Eastern Sea. If the north and west speak of hardship, the east speaks of mystery. Narnians have always turned their gaze eastward, for the rising sun draws the eye to horizons where sea and sky blur into a single band of gold. Countless sailors dream of venturing beyond the known isles, and many do, though few return. The Eastern Sea is dotted with archipelagos, the Lone Islands, the Dragon Island, the island of the Dufflepuds, and stranger shores, where enchantments distort perception itself. Here reality grows thin, and what a mariner believes may shape what he sees. One crew reports a water so clear they seem to sail through the sky itself. Another describes seas of lilies, stretching farther than sight, fragrant with sweetness. These wonders suggest that the Eastern Ocean is not merely physical, but metaphysical, a passageway to truths beyond comprehension. 3. The Silver Sea and the Utter East. At the edge of all things lies the Silver Sea. Unlike ordinary water, its waves gleam as though infused with starlight, and lilies as white as moonlight cover its surface. Sailors who reach this far say the air itself grows thinner, sharper, as though their lungs draw in something purer than oxygen. The horizon ceases to bend. The world seems to flatten into an endless plain of brightness. Beyond this, a great wall of water rises, not falling, not flowing, but standing as though upheld by invisible strength. Past it lies Aslan's country, visible in fleeting glimpses, green mountains, bright fields, and a light that is not of this world. No map can record this realm, for only those permitted by Aslan may pass through. To most, it is but a vision, a promise glimpsed, and then lost. Yet Narnians hold it as their ultimate hope, the proof that their world, however fair, is but a shadow of something greater. 4. The symbolism of the edges. Geographers may argue about these extremes, charting currents and recording distances, but the Narnians themselves interpret them spiritually. The north warns of pride. Those who wander too far into the frozen lands risk becoming as cold-hearted as the giants. The west teaches humility. Some lands are not for mortals, and wisdom lies in knowing one's limits. The east, however, beckons with longing. It reminds Narnians that their story is not complete within their own world. Every sunrise is a miniature prophecy, a daily rehearsal of the journey toward the true East. Thus, the edges are not barriers, but invitations. They whisper of Aslan's greater design, a design that extends beyond Narnia's hills and rivers into realms unseen. For Narnians, to live faithfully is to remember that their homeland, however beloved, is not the final destination. The world's edges are thresholds of eternity. 5 testimonies of voyagers. Stories of those who traveled far east are treasured, especially the voyage of King Caspian's ship, the Dawn Treader. Its crew faced enchantments, dragons, invisible beings, and finally reached the very brink of the Silver Sea. Their accounts, passed down in taverns and classrooms alike, serve as both adventure tales and sermons. Children learn that bravery is rewarded, that greed is punished, and that beyond all quests lies the call of Aslan's own land. Some skeptics argue these are exaggerations, sailors' fantasies embroidered with myth. Yet the persistence of such tales across generations and from multiple crews convinces most Narnians that the utter East is real. Even those who never sail know that to live under Aslan's sky is to live with the hope of one day beholding his country. Closing reflection on the edges. The edges of the world are more than unexplored territories. They are mirrors of Narnia's destiny. To look north is to face hardship. To look west is to encounter silence. And to look east is to glimpse glory. Narnians may till fields, feast in halls, and wage wars, but always, beyond their daily life, looms the horizon, a reminder that their true story lies just beyond sight. Other worlds, Charn, Earth, and beyond. If Narnia's edges whisper of mysteries, the doorways between worlds thunder with revelation. For Narnia is not an isolated cosmos, but one among countless realms, each with its own laws, histories, and destinies. This truth emerges not through scientific deduction, but through lived encounters. Children vanishing through wardrobes, magicians dabbling in forbidden craft, and great wars decided by interventions from beyond. The very soil of Narnia is infused with the knowledge that their world is but one note in Aslan's greater song. 1. The wood between the worlds. The clearest evidence of multiplicity comes from the wood between the worlds, a tranquil forest scattered with countless pools. Each pool is a portal, a liquid window opening onto a different universe. The wood itself is a place of silence and drowsiness, where memory fades and ambition weakens. Some say this neutrality is by Aslan's design, a safeguard so no traveler lingers too long or grows power-hungry. The pools lead to everywhere: Earth, Charn, Narnia itself, and realms unnamed. Few mortals have ever navigated the wood, but those who have returned with stories of infinite possibility, proof that the cosmos is a grander weave than any single map can chart. 2. Charn, a world devoured by pride. Charn remains one of the most haunting examples of another world. Once a mighty empire ruled by sorcerer queens, its civilization reached pinnacles of power that rivaled even the legends of the Telmarines. Yet Charn's greatness was undone by ambition. The infamous Queen Jadis, through the utterance of the deplorable word, destroyed every living being in her world, leaving behind an empty city under a dying sun. The ruins of Charn are a monument to the dangers of unchecked pride. Columns topple, rivers stand stagnant, and the silence of extinction hangs heavy. Narnians know of Charn primarily through prophecy and fragments of story, but its warning is clear. Power without Aslan's guidance leads only to ruin. In Charn's fate, Narnians see a mirror of what their own land might become if corrupted by despair or tyranny. 3. Earth, the far-over world. Earth is perhaps the most curious of the other worlds, for it is both ordinary and extraordinary. To Narnians, Earth is a place of rumor and reverence, a realm where humans live without talking beasts or overt magic, yet which shares profound ties with Narnia's destiny. It was from Earth that the first king and queen of Narnia, Frank and Helen, were brought by Aslan, establishing a royal line grounded in humility and faith. It was from Earth that the Pevensey siblings came, heralding both the salvation and the fulfillment of Narnian history. And it was on Earth that time moved strangely, seconds there equating to centuries in Narnia, reminding all that the flow of existence is Aslan's to command. Earth thus stands as a paradox, mundane in appearance, yet chosen as the soil from which Aslan often draws his champions. For Narnians, Earth is a mystery wrapped in familiarity, alien yet kin, far yet near, a neighbor across the cosmic threshold. 4. Other realms and rumors. Beyond Charn and Earth, travelers whisper of countless unnamed worlds. Some tell of a realm made entirely of crystal mountains, reflecting light in endless rainbows. Others describe shadow realms, where darkness itself seems alive, hostile to all who enter. There are stories of lands where stars hang so low one can touch them, and of worlds that are but endless oceans, inhabited by leviathans larger than Narnia's hills. The very multiplicity suggests that Narnia is neither the center nor the end of creation. Instead, it is one chapter in a book so vast, no mortal could ever read it fully. Yet this is no cause for despair. Rather, Narnians find hope in knowing that Aslan's care extends not only to their forests and castles, but to realms beyond imagination. The peril of crossing between worlds. For all its wonder, world crossing is fraught with danger. The magician Uncle Andrew sought to manipulate the passage for his own gain, nearly unleashing Jadis into London. Even well-meaning travelers risk losing themselves, for the temptation to dominate new worlds is strong. The deplorable word of Charn is a grim reminder of how quickly ambition corrupts. Thus, Narnian lore insists that crossings must be guided by purpose, not curiosity alone. Aslan himself permits or denies such journeys, ensuring that only those with humility and courage may step between universes. For Narnians, meddling without blessing is not only folly, but blasphemy. Or 6. The harmony of many worlds. Despite the risks, the existence of multiple worlds reveals a cosmic harmony. Narnia, Earth, and Charn are not accidents placed side by side. They are part of a deliberate pattern. When the Pevensies brought their lessons from England into Narnia, they carried courage, rationality, and sacrifice. When Frank and Helen became Narnia's first rulers, they offered simplicity and love. Even Jadis, in her ruin, served as a cautionary tale against hubris. The weave of worlds thus enriches Narnia, providing lessons, heroes, and even adversaries that shape its destiny. Each crossing is a reminder that Aslan's design is grander than a single landscape, extending across realms like stanzas in a cosmic hymn. To speak of Narnia without acknowledging other worlds is to see only one star in a constellation. Charn warns of corruption, Earth offers companionship, and countless others beckon with possibilities. The wood between the worlds assures that infinity lies just a step away, while Aslan's voice affirms that each world, no matter how different, is woven into a single story. For Narnians, to dream of other realms is not escapism, but a way of remembering their place in a universe vaster than imagination, and their hope that beyond every world, Aslan's country awaits. In the end, Narnia's universe is less a solved equation than a living riddle. For every map drawn, another border dissolves into mist. For every chronicle recorded, there are whispers of stories suppressed, half-remembered, or still unfolding. This is not a defect in the fabric of Narnia's lore, but its greatest strength. Mystery itself is woven into the land's design, so that Narnians, and we who read of them, must learn to live by faith rather than certainty. One, the allure of the unanswered. Consider the nature of time in Narnia. Why does it bend so sharply compared to Earth's steady pace? The Pevensies' decades-long reign vanished in a heartbeat when they returned through the wardrobe, yet the scars of those years remained within their hearts. Was this bending of time a mercy, sparing mortals from losing their place on Earth? Or was it a test, a reminder that no realm, not even Narnia, can be mistaken for eternity? Or take the mysteries of the world's edges, the silver sea, the lilies, the utter east, where Aslan's country shines. These are not descriptions of places meant to be reached by cartographers. They are invitations to awe. To name every star and measure every depth would be to kill wonder itself, yet Narnia thrives on wonder. Its deepest lore does not close doors, but opens them, asking the traveler to walk further. 2. The balance of power and grace. At the heart of every unanswered question lies the figure of Aslan. His appearances are unpredictable, his silences even more so. Why does he allow tyrants, like the White Witch, to reign for centuries? Why does he withdraw after victories, leaving Narnians to govern themselves? Why summon children from Earth rather than appointing champions from within Narnia itself? The answers are never fully given, but Narnians live with the conviction that Aslan's choices, though veiled, are purposeful. His silence is not absence, but trust that his creatures may grow, fail, and rise again by their own courage. In this, Narnia teaches a paradox, that mystery is not the opposite of faith, but its companion. 3. The harmony of many worlds. The wood between the worlds whispers infinity. Charn's ruins testify to the wages of pride. Earth, with its ordinariness, becomes the cradle of Narnia's saviors. Each realm reveals a fragment of the larger design. But why do they exist side by side? Why should children from a grey London street be bound forever to the fate of talking beasts and enchanted forests? Perhaps the question itself is flawed. Perhaps worlds are not meant to be separated like beads on a string, but seen as chords in a harmony. When Aslan moves, the song is whole, even if mortals hear only their own part. To seek a single mechanistic answer to Narnia's mysteries is like trying to trap a melody in a cage. 4. The end that is a beginning. All of these unanswered mysteries culminate in the most haunting truth of all. Narnia itself is not the final reality. The last battle reveals that even the fairest woods and brightest castles are but shadows of a truer, higher world, Aslan's country. What Narnians thought was solid and eternal proves to be only a reflection. Yet far from despair, this revelation fills their hearts with joy. For the real Narnia is richer, brighter, and infinite. Thus the ultimate mystery is not how Narnia began, nor why time flows as it does, nor what lies beyond the maps. The ultimate mystery is what lies beyond death, beyond endings, in the land where Aslan dwells. And to that land, every unanswered question gestures like a signpost. The Chronicles do not resolve every thread. They do not give neat diagrams of cosmology or footnotes to explain Aslan's will. Instead, they leave us with mystery that humbles, comforts, and beckons. For Narnians, as for readers, this uncertainty is a gift. It teaches them that their story is not the whole story. It whispers that beyond the horizon, beyond the wardrobe, beyond even time itself, there is always more. Narnia's greatest lore is not what is told, but what is left untold. And in that untold silence, the voice of the great lion still waits, calling his children home. Take a moment. Let the breath soften. Let the sound of your room fall away until all you hear is the steady hum of your own body. Imagine now that you are standing at the edge of a vast wood. The stars above are brighter than any you have seen on earth. The night is cool, the air carrying a faint sweetness, as though the grass itself exhales. You have crossed the threshold into Narnia, not through wardrobe, nor through rings, nor horn, but through listening, through stillness. And here, in this stillness, time moves differently. The seconds elongate, stretching like silver threads pulled from a loom. With each breath you take, another layer of the world reveals itself. The murmur of a river in the distance, the flutter of an owl's wings, the quiet crackle of frost forming on fallen leaves. Narnia at night is not a place of fear. It is a place of watchfulness, of listening, of waiting. You are not alone, though you may not see anyone nearby. The very trees seem to lean toward you, aware of your presence, curious at your passing. Before you is a meadow lit by moonlight. The grass gleams silver, bending in waves as the night wind crosses it. In the distance, a cluster of cottages rests, thatched roofs glimmering faintly, warm smoke rising from their chimneys. These are the homes of talking beasts and kind folk, gathered in gentle communities where the day's labors are over and the night offers respite. A single lantern burns at the end of the village lane. It sways faintly with the wind, casting a pool of golden light onto cobblestones. Somewhere a dog gives one soft bark, and then silence swallows the sound. Look up. The sky of Narnia is unlike Earth's. The constellations shift into forms you half recognize. A lion stretching its paws across the horizon, a ship sailing forever eastward, a great stag with antlers that touch the rim of the sky. The stars seem closer, more alive, as if they are not distant suns, but windows into something truer, brighter, awaiting beyond the veil. Breathe. You are standing at the edge of the meadow, and all is still. You are standing at the eastern parapet. The wind from the ocean is cool and clean. carrying the faintest trace of salt and the sweeter ghost of cliffside flowers. Far out, the horizon is a line of ink, and just above it hangs a patient star. The towers behind you are quiet. Banners stir only enough to prove the world is still moving. Somewhere in the gardens, a nightbird tries a single note and thinks better of it. You take the stair slowly, fingers grazing the marble rail where countless hands have passed. Every step is a memory, but tonight the memories are hushed. They sit like friendly shadows along the wall and watch you go. Your feet find the terrace, and the terrace opens to the long sea view, to the silver lanes that lead away into distances you cannot count. Let the air in, let it cool your chest, let it bring the moon with it. Down the slope, past the low-clipped hedges bright with moonlight, a narrow path slips into the grass and turns west, away from the sea, away from the shining and the salt. You follow it because it is there, and because the night is kind, and because some paths are invitations, even when no voice names you. The fields beyond the walls are quiet as breath held in a throat. Dew glitters on the blades, and when you walk through them, your ankles whisper. Somewhere a fox decides you are not worth announcing. Somewhere a rabbit decides you are not worth fleeing. The world is awake in the way a dream is awake, softly, on its own terms. Now step softly into the forest. The canopy arches overhead, branches interwoven like the rafters of some ancient cathedral. A hush falls, and you feel the weight of the woods around you. The trunks are massive, their bark lined with deep grooves, each tree old enough to remember kings whose names are forgotten. The silence is not emptiness, it is full of presence, the rustle of leaves shifting as though in whispered conversation, the creak of wood stretching in its sleep. Some trees of Narnia truly speak, and even those that slumber seem to dream. If you pause and place your hand on the rough bark, you might feel a pulse, like the faint beat of a hidden heart. And here in the dark, mysteries linger. Legends tell of the outer veil, that shimmering horizon where maps fade and the known lands end. At night, the wind carries strange sounds from those veiled realms, whispers, almost words, echoes of horns, laughter that could be joy or sorrow. No expedition has ever returned with certainty from those edges. Some say the voices belong to spirits of the sea. Others claim they are the calls of Aslan himself, beckoning the brave to step beyond what is safe. You listen, the wind shifts. For a moment, you think you hear your own name carried back to you, but when you turn, the forest is still. If you keep walking, the castle dwindles to an outline, then a thought, then only a feeling on your back, the sense of being watched over, not watched. The path darkens a shade, then lightens, then darkens again as the land folds into itself, and at last you see a glow suspended in the mist. Lanterns, many of them, not glaring, not bright, only warm. A village hums ahead, small as a held breath. Houses of timber and stone lean companionably toward one another. Roofs pitched steep enough to shrug off snow. Windows round as coins catching the moon. Iron hooks bend from doorposts, and from them hang glass lamps with sleepy flames. The mist that wandered down from the hills has chosen to stay here, and the lamps turn it to honey. Across the square, a brook slips under a low bridge and laughs to itself. It has learned every cobble, every curve, and makes a friendly sound about it. The air smells of wood smoke and clover tea. Somewhere, someone has baked bread for the morning and could not resist breaking one loaf now. Walk deeper, The forest opens into a clearing. Moonlight pools in the center, illuminating a circle of standing stones, half buried by moss and ivy. The stones are weathered, carved with sigils no Narnian scholar has ever fully translated. They hum faintly in the night air, vibrating like low music. Perhaps they were raised in honor of Aslan, or perhaps they predate even his singing at the dawn of the world. No one knows. All that is certain is that when the moon is high, the stones seem alive. They radiate warmth, as if remembering fires that once burned between them. You sit among them, and the stones welcome you as if you were expected. Close your eyes. You hear a stream nearby, water slipping gently over stones. You hear the beating wings of a nightjar circling above. The world is still, yet full. You are alone, and yet accompanied. Every sound feels magnified. Every breath you take becomes part of the forest's rhythm. You are not an observer here. You are part of the song. A fawn goes by, scarf wrapped twice around his neck, a bundle of letters under his arm. He nods to you as if you have always passed this way, as if you are a regular in his memory. A dwarf rounds the corner with a coil of copper wire and a pocket full of small tools that click together when he moves. He tips his cap and disappears into a doorway bright with lamplight. On a porch, two talking mice sit with their tails joined like a question mark, heads close, whispering a plan they will execute tomorrow with modest pride. There is no business you must do here. The village is here, to be the place the world remembers when it wants to remember gentleness. Stand in it, borrow its pace, let its lamps arrange the shadows for you until nothing is sharp enough to hurt. A bell rings once, too soft to startle, and the sound becomes the night's center. From it, paths unwind, one over the hill to an orchard, one to a mill that keeps its own time by the moon's angle on the river, one to a set of steps in the earth that you would not notice if you were in a hurry. You are not in a hurry. The steps are old, worn in the middle where the feet have loved them most. They spiral down under a round arched lintel into stone that remembers the sea from which it came. The air cools first, then warms from beneath. The scent changes, wood smoke thins, and a deeper breath rises to meet you. Iron and something sweet and mineral, the way rain smells when it chooses the red soil. And in this stillness, questions rise, not as puzzles to be solved, but as mysteries to be held. Who first set these stones here, and why? Do they mark the boundary of one world and the beginning of another? Is Narnia the true world, or only a shadow, a rehearsal for something greater? Why does Aslan come and go in silence, leaving only echoes of his presence? And when the Pevensies return to Earth, in an instant after lifetimes spent as kings and queens, did the stars of Narnia remember them still? The forest offers no reply. It does not need to. Questions are enough. Questions are the doorways by which wonder enters. The lantern you carry, when did you pick it up, gives a softened circle of light ahead. The walls glitter back at you here and there, as if someone had pushed stars into the rock when it was still soft. Your footfalls become a metronome for the cave's low music. It is not the song of the creation you are hearing, not the first notes, but it is kin to that song, and it knows the words without needing to speak them. At the last turn, the narrow stair flowers open onto an underworld hall, so wide that the lantern becomes a private secret in your hand. Heat breathes at you, not punishingly, not harsh, only like a great hearth across a winter room. Lakes lie like mirrors of brass. Veins of crimson and gold thread the cavern roof. Columns rise thick as castle keeps, but they are not carved by hands. They have grown, and they are still growing in the manner of stones, which is to say with patience. Welcome to Bedtime, the firelit country beneath the underland, where gems are not collected but cultivated, where the ground bears fruit that hardens into rubies only when it has been sung to. There, ahead, a tree stands in a basin of cooled obsidian. Its trunk is clear as ice, its branches braided with veins of light, and from those branches hang fruits the size of a child's fist, not apples, not pears, garnets, perhaps, or young sapphires, but not yet. In this heat, they glow with an inner dawn, and when the cavern wind sways them, they knock together and make a music like teaspoons touching glass. Beyond the tree, a flow of silver pours from a cleft, sheeted and smooth. It falls soundlessly until it meets the pool, and only then does it voice its pleasure. A salamander, the color of sunset, swims through it and leaves a wake of sparks. The cave breathes again. You breathe with it. You walk along a path white as bone, and on either side of you gem grass grows, blades with edges too fine to touch. Here and there, a cluster of small stones, citrine, peridot, push up through the crust, as if they have been impatient to be born. When your lantern passes, they turn their faces toward it, and then toward you, and then toward the unseen ceiling, where 1,000 seams glimmer like a constellated sky beneath the true one. If you listen closely, you will hear the low hum of the earth's old promise, that even in darkness there are gardens, that even under pressure there are seeds, that even deep below the remembered world, something is ripening toward beauty. Let your shoulders loosen, let your jaw loosen, let the breath you did not know you were holding go. When you are ready, turn back. The path knows you now. The one who finds Bedtime is never lost on the return. Up the steps, the cool descends again, then the mild chill of night, then the crisp, salt-clean air as you step into the open. The lantern gutters once and accepts the moon as successor. The village is quieter now, lamps have hooded themselves, and the brook is telling shorter stories. If you wish, sit on the low wall by the bridge. The stone has kept a pocket of day warmth for you. The mist rewrites the square into a new map every minute. You can pretend you are traveling simply by watching it. Let your hands rest in your lap. Let the breath find the same pace as the brook and the same patience. From here, you can see the line where the village yields to field, and field yields to hedge, and hedge yields to path, and path yields to road, and road yields to coast, and coast yields to ocean, and ocean yields, eventually, if you are faithful and foolish enough, to the silver sea. Think of that sea. Think of how it brightens until it does not look like water at all, only like light made liquid. Think of a keel drawing a thin silver line on its face. Think of the far east, where the mountains stand like posted sentinels at the very edge of knowing. Think of the last wave that does not break, only breathes. And then let a question rise, and do not arrest it. Beyond the map's clean margin, past the mountain of Aslan, beyond the last gold of the sea, and the last star that will consent to be catalogued, what waits? Perhaps a country where the sky is green, and the birds sing with voices that braid 3 notes at once. Perhaps a desert whose sand knows your true name, and pronounces it when you lie down to sleep. Perhaps a city woven of wind, whose streets you can walk, only if you have learned to become lighter than regret. Perhaps only a door, plain as a stable's door, and yet greater than every palace that ever knew a crown. Do not answer. That is not what the question wants. It wishes to be kept, to be carried, to be the smooth stone you keep in your pocket so your fingers can remember, wonder. Let it sit with you. Let it open you in the same way the tide opens the shore, a little, then a little more. If you return now to Cair Paravel, and you will, by the same patient path, the steps will receive you as they did before, and the moon will still be spilling itself down the stone. The towers will have shifted their shadows, but only to make room for you. In the high halls, the floor keeps the day's heat. It presses gently into the soles of your feet, as if to say, you have gone out, you have come in, and the house has noticed. Stand once more at the parapet. Let the ocean write its even script. The star you thought was waiting for you has drifted just a finger's width, which is exactly the measure of time you have been away. Place your hands on the stone. It knows many oaths, many griefs, many joys. It can hold one more. Now, breathe with the water, in as it gathers, out as it lays itself down. Breathe with the choir, a thread at first, then another thread, then another, until the braid is strong enough to hold you and light enough to lift you. The lamps along the inner court are dimming. The village, under its mist, has closed its eyes and is dreaming itself back together. Far below, the caves are warm with the idea of fruit that will become jewels. Far beyond, the silver sea leans toward morning, and past even that, beyond the map and the last mountain, something is waiting, but not impatiently. It has all the time it needs, which is to say, all time. Let the choir thin, let the waves remain. Now the meditation shifts inward. Perhaps you are lying in your room, listening with headphones, eyes half closed. The hum of a heater, the faint glow of a lamp, these fade. In their place, the lantern on the village path flickers, the stones hum, the ocean roars. You are here and there at once. Earth and Narnia overlap like transparent veils. The boundary between them thins, and for a moment you cannot say which is more real, the bed beneath you or the moss under your feet. And so, you let go of the need to decide. You let both be true. You are both listener and traveler, both sleeper and dreamer. The night deepens. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The owl calls once more and is silent. The stones grow cool, their hum fading as the moon lowers. The ocean tide withdraws, leaving silence vast and complete. Narnia sleeps. You too may drift into that sleep, not as escape, but as communion. When you wake, the questions will remain, soft as footprints on dew. Who built the forgotten ruins? Why does time bend here? What lies beyond the veil? You need not answer tonight. You need only rest in the wonder of not knowing. And as you breathe, slower now, the voice of Aslan lingers faintly in the air. Not words, not commands, but presence, assurance, the promise that you are seen, that you belong, that the story is not yet finished. The lantern fades, the stars dim, and in the silence of Narnia's night, you find rest. The night deepens, the stars wheel slowly overhead. The owl calls once more and is silent. The stones grow cool, their hum fading as the moon lowers. The ocean tide withdraws, leaving silence vast and complete. And as you breathe, slower now, the voice of Aslan lingers faintly in the air. Not words, not commands, but presence, assurance, the promise that you are seen, that you belong, that the story is not yet finished. The lantern fades, the stars dim, and in the silence of Narnia's night, you find rest,